Chapter 857. After returning from the mysterious dim forest, he finally managed to make it in time for his first meal of the day. Unfortunately, he ate the wrong thing when he was eating. It was the food of the divine realm, and it was the meat of a demigod magical beast. Even if it was just a little bit of his little finger, it was enough to make him suffer. Just now, everyone saw him eat a big piece. At this time, his whole body was about to turn into a torch. The surging essence was rampaging in his body, and the energy that did not belong to the five elements realm was being released explosively in his body. Yin Nuashing couldn't stand it anymore. She knocked on Bing Air's head and appeared beside Law in a flash. She slapped him on the shoulder, and suddenly, the surging energy in the latter's body calmed down. The excess energy was all absorbed by Yin Nuashing. Sorry, I forgot that this thing could be eaten casually. After pulling Law ashore, Yin Nuashing said awkwardly. At this time, Law was still breathing out hot air as if his whole body was roasted. His body was red and white. After a long time, he trembled and came back to his senses. He scratched his head and said, "I've heard about how powerful those rare meats were before. Today, I finally tasted it. I didn't expect it to be so powerful. It seems that I don't have a life to enjoy those things. Thank you. I almost ate myself to death." Yin Nuashing scratched her head awkwardly. As soon as the two returned to the house, the sky suddenly darkened. Dim yellow and orange occupied half of the sky. Dusk, they didn't know when it came. It happened so fast that Yin Nuashing and others were stunned for a moment. They could hear the voices of the villagers in the distance. They seemed to be discussing the sudden dusk, but all of them were quite calm, as if they were used to it. It's already dusk." Law was also surprised. He scratched his head with his palms and said, "It seems that Fu Yi is here. It's already been half a year." Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes, organized her words, and said, "Yes, I feel that the last Fu Yi was not long ago." Did it really not that long ago? I keep feeling like only a short while has passed. Haha, it's you guys who don't feel anything. You've been running around outside all the time. Adventurers wake up early to pack up, run around, and set up camp at night. Time passes quickly, and Fu Yi has 12 hours less in a day. Of the remaining 16 hours, half of it is night, and there are less than 6 hours in the day. It's normal for you to feel that time passes quickly. Law, who was attracted by Yin Nuashing's words, said a lot of information at once. Everyone looked at each other for a while and nodded inadvertently. Sigh, it's been half a year again. How long has it been since we left the Yin Empire? Yin Nuashing sighed and winked at Ling. It's probably because we ran out during the silent night last time. Perhaps we just happened to experience the silent night once, so we felt that time passed very quickly. Hee. Zero cooperated with Yin Nuashing, and the two of them talked nonsense together. The sudden dusk stunned the village for a moment, and then the people calmly adjusted their biological clocks to this time period. What should be done at dusk is what they're doing now. Law has been tidying up the second floor of the main house and 2 side rooms for everyone. It is estimated that this is also their way of adjusting their biological clocks. No matter what they were doing just now, they treated dusk as dusk and daytime as daytime. Yin Nuashing felt that even if they were not killed by Fu Yi, the creatures on Xingyuan continent would not be able to take it. What a strange planet. Let's not talk about the 28 hours a day first. Every half a year, the time of each day will be shortened by 12 hours. There are only 6 hours in the day, and the remaining 10 hours are all night. This is the result of the acceleration of the planet's rotation, Ling said to everyone in their souls. But this is not the first time I've seen such a strange phenomenon. The realm of the gods itself is not normal. With such a large area, it actually has an accurate time period of 24 hours a day. The other strangest living planets I've seen have half a year of day and half a year of night, but there are still creatures living there happily. That's why the world is very strange, Yin Nuashing replied. In the blink of an eye, the process from dusk to night did not last long. When Law had just finished preparing the rooms, the sky had already turned dark. It took less than half an hour. The speed of the planet's rotation was very strange. It was sometimes fast and sometimes slow, but did not cause anything that could be noticed, such as earthquakes. Another night had passed in a short period of time. It was the first real night they had spent in this strange five elements realm after leaving the realm of the gods. Although the night was a little strange, and there was a possibility that there was a thing under their buttocks that was going to destroy dozens of universes nearby, everyone felt inexplicably at ease. They did not feel any pressure and fell asleep easily. They felt so at ease that Yin Nuashing did not know whether to say that they were stupid or too calm. Yin Nuashing could not calm down. He suddenly came to the Wuyuan realm and was suddenly told that if he did not find something, that thing would destroy the void. He could not calm down. Moreover, his biological clock had not been adjusted, so he could not sleep. However, Little Purple Soul was sleeping like a little pig next to him. Ming was dragged to the next room during the struggle between Little Moon and Yu-Er. She was not allowed to sleep in the same room as him. Yin Nuashing did not think much of it, but to Ming, it looked like the end of the world. Qin Yin, Chu Yingzhan, Bing Air, Zero, Nightmare, and Yuan Shu were probably sleeping comfortably. They were used to sleeping soundly in all kinds of environments. They could sleep peacefully in the celestial realm, where the world was going to be destroyed at any time. It was just adjusting their biological clock, and they fell asleep as soon as they closed their eyes. Although Yin Nuashing thought that it was because they were too careless. Law's house was very big. It was built by him and the villagers together. Since he was a general, he had to have a big room. It was a strange logic, but it was implemented. As a result, Law was not used to living in such a big house alone. Yin Nuashing and the others slept in the main room, while Law slept in the side room. He left the largest main room for the group of powerful wandering adventurers. However, he was used to sleeping in the side room because the main room was too big for him to sleep alone. It was just right for him to leave it to Yin Nuashing and the others. Yin Nuashing did not refuse, because Law had already stuffed himself into the side room, so there was no time for him to refute. The furnishings in the side room were very simple. There was a hard bed covered with a mat, but no one had a chance to refute. Even Chu Yingzhan, the crazy girl, was blocked outside the door before she could open her mouth. After some discussion, they felt that Law would not compromise if they did not resort to violence. With that, they had no choice but to move into the main room with simple furniture awkwardly, and then fell asleep together. Yin Nuashing took out a set of soft quilts from the pendant and gave it to Little Purple Soul. The little girl pestered Yin Nuashing for a long time, telling him stories and listening to the requiem. It took him half an hour to deal with this clingy little sprite, and then he laid down at this strange time, unable to fall asleep for a long time. In desperation, Yin Nuashing had to find Yao Hua and the others in her soul to ask about the situation. Strangely, Yin Nuashing thought that Yao Hua and the others should be in the daytime at this time, but when she asked in her soul, all she got was a bunch of snoring sounds. Damn, the sky is so dark. I'm afraid the sun has exploded. Hearing the snoring sounds from her soul, Yin Nuashing could no longer stay calm. She jumped out of bed with a strange look on her face, unable to control herself. She carefully climbed out of bed and gently pulled Little Purple Soul out of her hair. Yin Nuashing tidied up her pajamas that were almost torn off. She looked at the little girl's cute sleeping posture and could not help but chuckle. She gently tapped the little girl's nose with her right hand and watched as Little Purple Soul mumbled and turned over, curled herself up in the quilt, and fell asleep. She then turned around and walked out of the room. She could not fall asleep anyway. The Book of the Epic. The layout of the second floor was smaller than the first floor. There was an open corridor outside and a wooden fence on the outside to prevent people from falling down. The entire second floor was connected by the corridor. At the back, facing the kitchen below, there was a small protruding area that looked like a platform. At this time, Yin Nuashing leaned against the wooden fence of the platform and looked at the other four rooms. The two rooms next to his and Purple Soul's rooms were Little Moon, Yu-Er, Ming, and Qin Yan's rooms. The other two rooms were Yuan Shi's, Nightmare's, and Zero's. Although Yin Nuashing could not understand why Luo lived alone and had 5 rooms, leaning against the wooden fence, Yin Nuashing muttered softly. Holding the ball of light in his hand, He turned around and looked at the quiet night sky outside. Then, he noticed a very strange phenomenon. There were 6 moons in the sky. Perhaps they were not 6 moons, but 6 planets or something in this galaxy. One of them was yellowish in color, a bit like the one they were teleported to when they first arrived here. However, it was only 2 billion miles away. The latter should be hanging on the edge of the sky and should be a very small dot. Why was it as big as a basin hanging on the edge of the sky? He had no idea. This world was too strange. The 6 moons were neatly arranged in a row. From the smallest yellowish one on the left, which was the size of a basin, to the largest red planet on the right, which was the size of a millstone. The 6 moons moved very slowly. They hung in the sky for a long time before there was a clear distance between them. With the double enhancement of the Eye of the Ocean and the Evil Spirit Eye, Yin Nuoxing's line of sight was able to penetrate through countless distances and landed on the largest red moon. He looked at it seriously and realized that there were traces of life on it. There was the existence of the ocean and the earth. However, the distance was too far and his eyes could not see any further. His eyes were about to burst. He could only see that there seemed to be something moving on it, but he could not be sure if it was a person or something else. The Crimson Moon? According to the Book of Epochs, the red moon in this galaxy is a planet 10 billion miles away from the Xingyuan continent. It is slightly larger than the Xingyuan continent. It is located in a place that can barely receive sunlight. Fortunately, the sun in this galaxy is powerful enough. I did not expect there to be traces of life on it. Rubbing his sore eyes, Yin Nuoxing sighed. Even if there was life on it, it would not be an ordinary life. He just did not know if it used the same system as the Xingyuan continent. Once again, he tried to use the Book of Epochs to sense the abnormal energy fluctuations in this world. However, he gave up after a while. The Book of Epochs only needed 1 second to scan this world. Everything it detected would be gathered into information. He had already scanned this world 10 times in a short period of time. If he continued, this world might suddenly collapse. The fragile 5 elements realm could not withstand the powerful search of the Book of Epochs. Brother, while Yin Nuoxing was fiddling with the Book of Epochs in this world, the door to the room beside him suddenly opened with a creak. A tall and holy figure walked out while stretching. The huge wings on her back were very dazzling under the moonlight. Her holy face looked even more stunning under the 6 different moonlights. Her most obvious feature was none other than Ming. Ming, why are you awake? Looking at the girl who gently leaned over and then snuggled into his arms, the huge wings rolled the 2 of them up. Yin Nuoxing habitually rubbed her swaying silver-white hair and said softly, "Ugh." Ming pursed her red lips and hesitated. After a while, she said, "I was awakened by a dark energy." Dark energy? Yin Nuoxing was shocked. He had not sensed anything at all just now. Just as he was about to scan it with the Book of Epochs, Ming grabbed his hand and shook his head. "It's very far away. I don't know how far apart it is, but I know that it's very far away. It suddenly came, and it's more like the aftermath of that energy explosion. I'm an energy body of divine power, and this kind of power is my natural enemy, so I can feel it. Even Big Brother might not be able to sense that energy explosion in that distant place. Even if I can't sense it, I can't sense it. Where is it?" Yin Nuoxing asked. Ming looked up at the sky and was surprised when she saw the 6 moons. However, she did not pay much attention to it. She stretched out her slender finger and pointed at the distant sky. Yin Nuoxing thought she would point in the direction of the crimson moon, but she pointed in a direction where he could not see anything. It was not above the 6 moons, but at the end of the horizon. Furthermore, he could not see anything even with his eyesight. Perhaps it was, as she said, very far away. "Where's Big Brother? Why aren't you sleeping?" Ming retracted her gaze and stood on her tiptoes. She pressed her face against Yin Nuoxing's cheek and asked softly, "Insomnia. I feel like I can't settle down." Yin Nuoxing shrugged and said honestly. Then he pointed at the crimson moon in the sky and said, "I just saw life on the crimson moon, but the Book of Epochs did not tell me anything. That place seems to be in a temporary, untouchable state. I plan to take a look later. By the way, Ming, Did you look at the night sky last night? Did you see the 6 moons? Yin Nuoxing asked. Ming pondered and thought for a while. Then, she shook her head. I can't remember. I probably didn't see it. If I saw it, I should remember. The 6 moons are too obvious. Seeing Yun Nuoxing's expression, Ming suddenly thought of something and said, Brother, do you think they're related to Fuyi? A little. It's just a guess. After all, this place is really strange. When I arrived, I felt that something was wrong all over. I couldn't sit or rest. I can't tell if it's because of the shards or some other reason. Yin Nuoxing's expression was slightly complicated. Ming wrinkled her nose and pulled Yin Nuoxing towards his room. She said softly, Brother, don't think too much. Didn't the villagers say today that you have to have the mentality to live through life? You can't rush anything. Rest well under this strange night. Maybe something good will happen when you wake up tomorrow morning. Yin Nuoxing thought about it and agreed. Then I'll charge the Book of Epics with energy first. When the time comes, I'll launch a worldwide thorough scan. By the way, girl. Ming looked at him with a smile. Your room is next door, right? Yin Nuoxing pointed to the side, speechlessly. I want to sleep with brother. Ming rolled her eyes at him. She curled her huge wings and pulled Yin Nuoxing into her arms before he could react. She closed the door and gently threw the two of them onto the bed. Ming closed her eyes and made a steady snoring sound, signaling that she had fallen asleep. Yin Nuoxing did not know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at Ming curled up in his arms like a kitten. She even used her huge wings to wrap around him so that he could not escape. This girl is getting more and more powerful. I wonder what kind of battle will happen when Little Moon and you will meet tomorrow morning. Yin Nuoxing glanced at Xiao Xian, who was sleeping soundly on Ming's neck. He then looked at Little Purple Soul, who was sleeping on his side. He sighed helplessly and threw his messy thoughts to the back of his mind. Then, he hugged the soft body that was filled with divine power and closed his eyes. In the end, he even felt the kitten rubbing against his face. In the Jiesu secret realm, at the peak of a tall mountain, there stood a towering tree that was swaying in the wind. A young girl in a purple dress stood there gracefully, her jade-like hands gently supporting herself beside the tree. Her long purple hair swayed in the wind, and when the wind stopped, it fell down her shoulders and stopped extending all the way to her knees. The young girl's slender figure was surrounded by a faint purple mist. Her pair of deep purple Mei Mao shone with a breathtaking light. She was wearing a black hooded cloak with spots of bright red blood sticking to it. The young girl's aura of a fairy was suddenly filled with a fierce, murderous aura. She was like a fairy stained with blood. She was alluring and extremely dangerous. The young girl looked at the battlefield in the mountain range below. There was a sea of people piling up, and countless energy explosions were flying everywhere. In the mountain range, scarlet magma was surging, and the scarlet color of blood illuminated the sky. Even in the sea of magma, the battle did not stop. Everyone fought their way into the magma and came out of it unscathed. In the sky above the sea of magma, there was a ball of light that was about the size of a head. It was like a miniature sun that was spitting out huge tongues of fire. Those fearless people were fighting with their lives on the line for this ball of light that was emitting a strange energy. However, no matter how powerful their killing techniques were, no one died, even if they were surrounded by countless strong people. This chaotic battlefield had become crazy. It had become a meat grinder that would never stop. Swoosh! Suddenly, on the quiet mountain peak, there was a gust of wind behind the young girl, and a young figure suddenly appeared. The young man's face was a little thin, and he was as strong as a bear. There was a simple and honest smile on his face that seemed to never fade, and there was a deeply hidden, ferocious aura in his black eyes. Big sister, I'm back. I have good news and bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? The large man scratched his head and bowed to the young girl in front of him, respectfully saying, this scene was a bit strange. A large man was respectfully speaking to a young girl that was half his size. However, the large man didn't think there was anything wrong with this. He knew that this young girl in front of him. Let's talk about the bad news first. The young girl slowly turned around. Beneath her tattered black cloak was an elegant and refined face with an inexplicably mysterious charm. There was a smile without warmth on her face, causing the large man to shiver. However, he quickly recovered. He knew that this young girl always had this faint smile on her face. She was a beauty that could cause the downfall of nations and cities. Without warmth, no one dared to approach her. Anyone that came within 2 meters of her would be swept over by her excessively beautiful, deep purple eyes. That kind of oppression was not something that anyone could enjoy. This rose had thorns, and they were poisonous thorns that could crush anyone's heart. This was the conclusion that the large man came to after following her for so long. Even though she was as beautiful as a fairy, there weren't many people that tried to curry favor with her. It seemed like there was only one guy who, after being saved by Big Sister, was hell-bent on her. However, Big Sister seemed to have said that she had a boyfriend. He still remembered that when a group of people were surrounded and struggling for their lives, that group of people was frightened by Big Sister. They pointed at her and said that she was a monster. At that time, Big Sister seemed to be quite happy, saying that he was also treated as a monster. It would be great if she became a monster too. The large man's thoughts ran wild. The bad news is that the 3 groups of people that Big Sister asked us to look for, we haven't seen a single one of them. The burly man scratched his head and felt the girl's gaze lock onto him. He couldn't help but shudder and hurriedly explained, "It's not that we can't find them. I asked almost everyone, and they all said that they saw them 10 days ago, but they suddenly disappeared one day. Some of the people who saw them said that the last time they saw them was in a ruin at the border of the Soul and Wood elemental regions. The 3 groups seemed to be together, and the leader was the one with the colored hair. There are many of us in that ruin, and there are only 2 floating islands inside. No one can enter the second floating island." The girl blinked and nodded. She turned around and said flatly, "Tell your people to come back. There's no need to go into the ruin. Now, tell me the good news." The good news is, the Celestial Academy's people didn't manage to take the holy item of the Wood elemental region. The leaders of the group all died several times, but no one was able to touch it. The large man said, "I don't think anyone will be able to take the holy item of the Fire elemental region either." The girl looked down at the chaotic battlefield and said flatly. She then turned around and walked down the mountain. How many holy items have come out so far? The brawny man pondered for a moment and counted with his fingers. 4. The first to come out was Wood elemental, then Metal elemental, Water elemental, and Fire elemental. By the way, most of them have reached the 5th level of the immortal rank, and their peak strength should be at the peak of the immortal rank. "Oh," the girl replied flatly and waved her hand. "Tell everyone to disperse for now. Groups of 10 will develop in the secret realm. Blockhead, you take your people and follow me to the ruin." Didn't I say we don't need to go?" The large man was confused. "Did I say that? If I did, I'll change it now." The girl glanced at him. The large man smiled bitterly and nodded before disappearing in a flash. Taking off the hood on her head, the young girl shook her head. Her deep purple hair fluttered in the wind as her beautiful eyes looked towards the distant sky. Suddenly, a look of longing that they had never seen before appeared in her eyes. That smile that came from the bottom of her heart was enough to stun everyone. "Little star, where did you run off to?" Chapter 858. It was an uneventful night. The extremely long night made everyone feel a little dizzy. As they opened their eyes one by one, they ushered in the second short morning of the 5 elements realm. Yinuashing tidied up a little, then tidied up little purple soul. She giggled as she tidied up. The girl seemed to be itchy all over. She would squirm at the slightest touch. After a while, Yinuashing saw that Ming had already left the room. There was a white feather on his head. She walked out of the room with little purple soul on her shoulder. As soon as Yinuashing came out, she closed the door behind her and saw Ming and Little Moon and Yu were arguing. The 3 of them were fighting by the riverside. Or rather, they were fighting from the 2nd floor all the way to the riverside. Yinuashing saw that the wooden fence on the 2nd floor had been broken through. There was a large area of burn marks on the ground that extended from below. It broke through the wall of the courtyard and stopped at the riverside. Yuan, Shi, Ling, and the others were watching the three girls play around in the courtyard. Luo Zhe was dumbfounded as he looked at the big hole in the wall that he made in the wall. "Hey, what are you doing?" Seeing that the three girls were fighting more and more fiercely, and that Little Moon and Ewer were working together to suppress the angel who was flapping its wings, Yin Nuoxing couldn't stand it anymore. She appeared in front of the three girls in a flash. She spread out her 6 wings and separated the three girls. After being separated, the three girls hurriedly tidied up and stood neatly in front of Yin Nuoxing. They lowered their heads and didn't say a word. "Why are you fighting?" Yin Nuoxing smacked their heads one by one. She put her hands on her hips and glared at the three girls whose clothes were messed up early in the morning. Even though they were standing in front of her obediently, there was still a terrifying energy storm surging behind them. Looking at the three girls who couldn't calm down, Yin Nuoxing sighed. She folded her hands in front of her, narrowed her eyes, and calmly looked at the three girls who had their heads lowered. There was an extremely gentle smile on her pretty face, and an inexplicable black aura rose behind her. Ming Ming, Little Moon, and the other 2 girls shuddered in unison. The energy behind their backs disappeared without a trace with a whoosh. Ming Ming and Yu trembled as they hugged Little Moon, their nominal eldest sister. Little Moon also hugged the 2 girls in fear. Her petite body could not stop trembling as she looked at Yin Nuo, whose black aura was getting thicker. Even though the expression on Yin Nuo's face was getting gentler and warmer, the 3 girls felt a shock that they could not resist from the bottom of their hearts. Oh, Big Brother's suppressive effect. TSK, TSK, TSK. No wonder that bastard can take in so many girls, said Miss Chu, who had been watching the whole thing from the courtyard. After a few minutes, the 3 girls finally calmed down and looked at Yin Nuoxing pitifully. Little Moon quickly switched to her serious personality. She coughed dryly, and under Yin Nuoxing's scrutinizing gaze, she muttered the reason for the fight early in the morning. As she spoke, Ewer added fuel to the fire, causing Ming to glare at her angrily. However, when the 2 girls saw Yin Nuoxing's colorful eyes staring at them, they still trembled and calmed down. "Oh, the 2 of you wanted to sneak in the middle of the night, but you saw that Ming had already taken a step away. So, you joined forces to judge this girl early in the morning. In the end, the 2 of you couldn't defeat an angel in the form of energy." Yin Nuoxing sorted out the sequence of events and let out a long sigh. He knew very well that the 3 girls would sneak in while he was asleep. Ming had stayed in his room from the beginning and refused to leave. It was Little Moon and Ewer who fought to the death to drag Ming away. Yin Nuoxing felt that it was a little, feeling someone's playful gaze behind her. Yin Nuoxing sighed and felt that her moral integrity had been completely destroyed. It was noisy all morning. According to the time, it was already noon. 6 hours of daylight. By the time everyone had breakfast at Law's house, more than 2 hours had passed. Law was very happy to share his things with others. Just like yesterday, Bing Air took out a pile of barbecue. Law seemed to have forgotten about yesterday's incident and finished a large basin of barbecue alone. Yin Nuoxing had to suck the energy from his body to prevent him from being stuffed to death. Although it was only 6 hours of daylight, the village was still lively at this time. When the neighbors greeted each other, they pushed the door open and shouted. It felt like everyone knew how to roar like a lion from Hudong. A roar could be heard from the street to the end of the street. It sounded a little noisy, but it had a rough, natural taste. However, the sound that sounded like the roar of lions from time to time made Yin Nuoxing and the others a little unaccustomed to it in a short time. Soon, Yin Nuoxing and the others heard a strange noise from the end of the village. Law had taken off his silver armor at this time and was cleaning up the yard in a coarse linen. He was still holding 1 or 2 pieces of animal skin in his hand. He planned to deal with them later. When he heard the noise, he stood up with a smile and said, "It should be the hunting team back. Let's go and have a look. Didn't they say that there were still 1 or 2 days?" Yin Nuoxing was a little stunned. During this silent night, the magical beasts are prone to riot. The village chief and the others should have noticed the movement of the beasts, so they came back early. Law scratched his head. A group of people followed Law to the village's dirt road. They could see many villagers coming out of their houses. Everyone had a very excited look on their faces. In addition to a few acres of terraced fields, more than 100 families in the village were waiting for the hunting team, which was in charge of meat. Every 10 days, or half a month, the hunting team would go over the mountains and go to the main life circle of the Xingyuan continent. Then they would return with enough prey for the whole village for half a month. It was a big event that almost counted the days. The group of people followed the villagers and walked forward. Finally, when they were about to reach the end of the village, they saw a group of people walking into the village. Yin Nuoxing and the rest did not rush over, but stood at the back of the crowd and looked into the distance. Walking at the front of the hunting team was an old man whose hair and beard had already turned white, but his body was still very strong. He looked like he was already over 60 years old, with his chest open and a gray tattered shirt draped over his shoulders. His footsteps were like the wind, and he did not look like an old man at all. As he walked quickly, the muscles on his body also trembled. His eyes were bright and full of vigor, and his wrinkled face was slightly rosy. He had a bit of white hair and a bit of youthful face, and he looked a little dignified. However, when he saw the children in the village coming over, he still took out some crude, medicinal herbs from his clothes. His smile was like a bright chrysanthemum, and the wrinkles on his face were all squeezed to the side. He laughed loudly and energetically. Hey, don't fight for it. Everyone has a share. Erguzi, you took too much. That belongs to Arya. Be careful that she will beat you up. Good children, don't fight for it. Everyone has a share. Don't waste your time. The herbs contained the energy of this world. Yin Nuoxing and the others could see that it was quite thin. However, according to the children's standards, those herbs were precious. Yin Nuoxing was not clear about the classification of herbs in the Xingyuan continent, but she could see that the energy of the herbs that the old man took out should be related to bone marrow cleansing. It could make the children grow stronger, and she guessed that they would grow up to be the same as the burly man next to her. The adults in the village did not go up to join in the fun, but instead ran towards the group behind the old man. The hunting group behind him had a large pile of game hanging from their bodies. The one at the very back was even carrying a 3-foot-long, wild boar-like magical beast. Such a bountiful harvest made the villagers happy. They hurriedly went up to help, plucking the game from their bodies. After which, the entire group walked towards the area in the middle of the two villages. After the burly old man greeted the villagers, he called for the others to come forward and help the hunting team. They carried the wild beasts and magical beasts respectively and walked towards the statue of the spirit of the starry sky. After a moment, he raised his head and saw the 8-foot burly man at a glance. Law was a big man, half as tall as the ordinary villagers. Yin Nuoxing stood beside him like a weak little girl. Although the latter's body was a little small, Law was still too big. He stood there like an iron tower. Now the villagers were busy carrying the game and gathering at the statue. Only Law and Yin Nuoxing were still standing on the village's dirt road. Hey, big man, why don't you go and help today? In the past, when the hunting team came back, you were more excited than anyone else. The old man's voice sounded like a big bell and a big drum. Then he walked quickly to Law, punched Law on the shoulder, and laughed. About that. Old master, I have a guest with me. How can I leave her behind? Law scratched his head and pointed at Yin Nuoxing and the others behind him. He smiled and said, Old man, they're all adventurers from the Yin Empire. Yin Empire. The old man was surprised and walked towards Yin Nuoxing in 2 or 3 steps. He looked at the group of people in surprise and said, The people of the Yin Empire still like to wear strange clothes. Oh, sorry. The spirit of the starry sky is blaming me. I am the village chief of Green Pine Village. My name is Dan. The 2 old men in my family did not give me a proper name since I was born. This is the only good name. It is not good for me to change the name given by the 2 old men, so I am called Dan. Oh, I feel a little embarrassed when I hear it. Village Chief Dan said a lot of things as soon as he opened his mouth. Yin Nuoxing and the others were stunned. They looked at each other and smiled bitterly. The people of Green Pine Village were really talkative. When the old man finished, Zero and Yin Nuashing walked up and introduced themselves. The old man nodded and then said how strange their clothes were. Yeah, every time I see people from the Yin Empire, they wear different clothes. There are no less than 20 people from the Yin Empire in our village. None of them are the same. This is the one that left the deepest impression. The old man nodded with his arms crossed in front of his chest. He was also looking at the clothes of Yin Nuashing and the others. None of the 10 of them were the same, which made the old man believe that they were from the Yin Empire. However, when he saw the girls, a trace of doubt flashed in his eyes. But I can tell that these girls are not ordinary people with one look. I have seen many of the gaudy clothes of the Yin Empire. These 3 girls look more like princesses from some noble family. Everyone followed village Chief Dan's gaze, and in the end, their gazes landed on Feng Ming, Chu Yingjian, and Yin Nuashing, causing everyone to be stunned. Feng Ming was wearing a pure white sleeveless dress with 2 wings on her back, although ordinary people couldn't see it. Chu Yingjian was wearing a man's black robe, and although it was a bit strange, it still looked quite luxurious. As for Yin Nuashing, who was unjustly attacked, everyone felt that his temperament was too ethereal. His eyes were slightly narrowed, and there was a harp in front of him, just like a well-bred vase. Although everyone knew that he was a violent maniac who couldn't be more violent, and that he advocated all kinds of energy explosions, with violence as his core ideology. If he was unhappy, he would even perform a destructive fireworks show, which was very exciting. Unfortunately, he had a girl's face and stood there quietly, just like a girl. I keep feeling that you are thinking of something very rude. Yin Nuashing turned around and looked at everyone with hidden bitterness. Illusion. It's all an illusion. You think too much. Everyone quickly waved their hands. Knowing that the old man was suspicious of their identity as adventurers, Yin Nuashing coughed and lifted a magic circle with his right hand. Under the old man's shocked gaze, he explained, "This idiot and I are both high-level magic circle masters. We usually rely on floating to walk. This time, we were wandering in the gloomy forest and were picked up by law because there was a problem with the space magic circle that we weaved. Also, old man, I'm a man." Hearing this, Village Chief Dan let out a long "oh." His old face was full of respect. He clasped his hands at Yin Nuashing and Zero. "So the 2 of you are magic circle masters. No wonder, no wonder." With just a few words, they managed to fool Village Chief Dan. As for whether he believed them or not, they did not care. After all, they were just passers-by and would probably leave after 2 days. They would not stay here forever. Right now, they still had to find that unlucky fellow. "Old man, let's not talk about this for now. Let's hurry to the square and help before the night of Fuyi falls." He knew that this group of people was very powerful, mysterious, and harmless. That was enough. He quickly pulled Village Chief Dan. "Everyone is waiting in the square." "Yes." Luo smiled. He had already finished thinking about Yunua Star at the moment when the sky fell. He didn't have any feelings at this time. He knew that this group of people was very powerful, mysterious, and harmless. "Oh, okay. You're still so impatient. Don't pull. Hey, my arm." Before Village Chief Dan could react, he was pulled away by law. Yin Nuashing and the others could even hear the sound of bones cracking. They could not help but feel a little embarrassed and quickly followed behind. "Ah, this is Lord Yao Hua at the edge of the main life circle of Xingyuan land. Suddenly, a loud laugh came from his soul. However, before he could finish laughing, Yin Nuashing and the others heard a crackling sound of collisions and screams. They looked at each other and rolled their eyes. What was this guy doing? "Ahem, little star, don't worry about that idiot." A moment later, Jining coughed lightly and continued the conversation. She sounded a little embarrassed. "We are now at the north of the main life circle. There's a border city here. The arrival of Fuyi caused the outbreak of the beast tide. Now, the battle is in full swing. I want to remind you to be careful." "It's already night over there?" Yin Nuashing asked. "Not yet. Looking at the sky, it doesn't seem that soon. Anyway, The beast tide came very suddenly. Everyone in the city is prepared, so the city walls should not be breached. We don't know if we should go and help. Mu Ling sighed. The situation here is similar, but everyone here is already in the head, so the beast tide has been suppressed for the first time in history. Lin Sheng's awkward voice slowly sounded at this time. Oh, by the way, which one of you looked up at the sky last night? Did you see the 6 moons? I saw it, but I didn't see anything, Yin Nuashing said. Bang, bang, bang. Clang. Roar. There was a noise and a large group of roars in their souls. Everyone was stunned and looked at each other for a moment. Then they heard Lin Sheng say, "Ignore it. Everything is fine here." Brother Yun, that red moon, the biggest one, threw a beam of light at the center of the main life circle last night. Do you have time to come and take a look? Clang. Bang. Do you want to go take a look? Yin Nuashing and Zero looked at each other. Yin Nuashing hesitated and said, "You guys go and take a look. Zero and I are accumulating power here to activate the Book of Epics and scan the whole world. We can't leave for now. Everything is fine here in the dim forest. The magical beasts in the main life circle have no intention of coming here to join in the fun. I have a premonition, but I don't know if I should say it." "Say it. We can take it," Yao Hua shouted, mixed with a lot of strange roars. "Okay, I have a bad feeling. I think we are in the wrong place." There was silence in their souls for 3 seconds. What the hell? F***CK, brother, what did you say? %@ asterisk at. A series of inhuman screams exploded in their ears, scaring Yin Nuashing and Zero so much that they fell to the ground. Yin Nuashing was held up by a few of his sisters in time, while Zero kissed the ground. It's just a premonition. The Book of Epics has scanned this world all the way to the core, but it didn't sense any special energy, Yin Nuashing said awkwardly. But the direction should be right. So, it's still very important to investigate this star origin continent. Zero explained in time, preventing Yin Nuashing from being killed by the screams in their souls. Chapter 859. By the time Yin Nuashing and the others rushed to the square, a large number of wooden tables of various sizes had already been set up with the statue of the spirit of the starry sky as the center. There were also high-back chairs, or simply a folding stool. These various tables and chairs were arranged in a row, surrounding the tables in a circle. There was also a group of young and strong people running back and forth, rushing like the wind into the house that was more than 20 meters away. Then, they carried a large pile of things over their shoulders and threw them on the square, continuing to move them. The others took over the tables and chairs that were gathered by the various families and hurriedly arranged them on the square. At this time, Yin Nuashing and the others also saw the village across the square, which was the village parallel to the river on the other side. Although it was said to be across the square, the two villages were actually the same family. They were just separated by a little. Yin Nuashing felt that he no longer had any strength to complain about this arrangement. Anyway, they were going about their own lives. It was fine as long as they were happy. It's just like a festival. Yuanshi looked around from afar, then looked at Yin Nuashing, who had a faint smile on his face, but was actually expressionless. He said, "Speaking of which, is it really okay to let Yao Hua and the others fight over there while we celebrate the festival here?" "Fight?" Yin Nuashing raised his eyebrows and rolled his eyes at him. "How can you tell from that idiot's tone that he wants to fight? That's a one-sided slaughter. They were just bored and jumped out to get rid of the evil." "That's right, it's just too boring." Everyone thought about it and felt that it seemed to be the case, so they ignored the two groups of people. "Oh, sorry, I was too excited and left you guys behind." Standing on the edge of the square and watching a group of people busy, Yin Nuashing and the others suddenly heard a rough laughter, turned their heads, and saw Law running over scratching his head. Before he stood still, his voice floated first. "Every time the hunting team comes back, the big guys will get together and take out homemade furniture or something from the city from home. Those who have chairs carry chairs and big tables. Those who have good craftsmanship will help to cook. Those who have drinks will bring out a few jugs of wine and make 100 family meals here. After eating and drinking enough, the rest will be used as reserve food and distributed to each family. Living frugally can last for a month, and now it's just Fuyi. This time the scale is still small. During Fuyi, it's also very difficult for the hunting team to go out during Fuyi, so they try to reduce unnecessary consumption as much as possible. So this monthly big meal will also be smaller when Fuyi hits Fuyi. Hey, you adventurers who run around must have never seen such a scene. The cooker you're talking about. Are you referring to that? Yin Nuashing reached out and pointed to the big man who had a huge stove next to him and was holding an iron pot with a diameter of 1 meter. It was in the middle of the square, next to the statue of the spirit of the stars. Under the huge pot, there was a fiercely burning flame. The thick soup was boiling, and the fragrance of meat was overflowing. 2 pieces of medicinal herbs were sprinkled on it, which added a bit of game flavor. Next to the pot, a muscular uncle in a black priest robe with open lapels was stirring the pot vigorously with a large spoon. The black robe on his shoulders was embroidered with a sun emblem like a child's hand drawn. When a muscular uncle stewed meat, he would suddenly kneel on one knee to the statue next to him. The sound made people worry if his kneecap was broken. By the way, he would say, "The spirit of the stars above. Thank the spirit of the stars for peace and food. Thank the spirit of the stars for letting the night come and be with us. Dean, have you peeled my radish? If you peel the skin off my finger again, I will throw you down and stew you together. The other pot is going to be burnt. Hurry up and help." Oh, the spirit of the stars above. I'm a little too excited, Gale. Stop fiddling with the eggs. You don't need them today. You wasted 10 days' worth of eggs. Oh, thank the spirit of the stars. It seems like I will have to cook an extra bowl of egg soup today. Everyone. Who is that guy? Everyone was stunned as they looked at the big man with chest hair who was cooking in a hurry. He was using the black priest robe to wipe his sweat, oil, and snot. His face was full of cold sweat. He's the best cook in the village. Actually, he is the priest in the village. Well, he is responsible for washing the spirit of the star statue, sweeping the floor, and rubbing the dust. Oh, the spirit of the stars above. I seem to have said too much. I have sinned. Anyway, other than cooking, he is responsible for praying to the spirit of the stars. Law said, and suddenly bowed to the strange statue and muttered, "Although this place is a little remote, where the spirit of the stars is, there will be a priest, even in the wilderness." Law smiled. Everyone looked at each other in silence. They could see from each other's eyes that they couldn't understand what this belief was. Then they sighed, but it was just as well. They wanted to know more about this mysterious spirit of the stars, and a priestess was sent to them. However, everyone looked at the priest and shuddered. It was better to join the church themselves than to ask this guy to learn more about the spirit of the stars. Other than those who were still busy making soup and serving bowls, the other villagers were already happily sitting at the side, casually, chatting with others about their daily lives. They could not stop talking about the spirit of the starry sky in the east and the starry sky in the west. Everyone's ears were about to grow calluses from hearing this. Little Purple Soul jumped down from Yun Nuashing's shoulder with a whoosh and ran wildly through the crowd and under the tables and chairs with a group of children. Anyway, when Yun Nuashing and the rest arrived, it was already a lively scene. They curiously looked at the fierce uncle with chest hair, who was cursing and scolding. In just a short while, a shout of "dinner is served" was like an earth-shattering roar, and then the entire square was boiling with excitement. The square, which had not been quiet for long, was suddenly in chaos again. Yin Nuashing and the others stood at the edge with pale faces and looked at the scene of a meal as if it was a war. They looked at each other and sighed. Law, who was shouting about the spirit of the stars and then fighting for the food, was already drowned by the crowd. This small village was not rich in resources and had a compact life. They were living their lives in such a strange way. A small meal gathering was as lively as Yin Nuashing and the others had seen in the big city. It seemed that as long as it was lively enough, even if it was in the open air and the northwest wind was blowing, it could still be exciting for the whole day. This was the scene that Yin Nuashing and the others saw. It was a pure communal meal. It was just the rations that the hunting team brought back for this month, and the whole village gathered together for a meal out of habit. It was also in this lively scene that the sky unknowingly turned dark. The time in this world was still strange. There were only 6 hours in the day, so it made Yin Nuashing and the others feel that it was already dark before dawn. This time, even dusk was very short. However, the arrival of Fu Yi did not make the villagers, who were keen on liveliness, feel anything. They were still eating and drinking in full swing. The little girl, Little Purple Soul, was running around the huge square like a purple elf. Yin Nuashing turned around and saw that only Ming and Bing Air were left. The little girl had already led the others out of the square. They sat at one table, ate 2 mouthfuls, and then changed to another. Yuan Shi and Nightmare displayed their amazing chopstick skills for a piece of meat that weighed several kilograms. The egg custard is a little bland. Yin Nuashing turned around and saw Ming holding a small bowl with a yellow egg custard in it. She was speechless for a moment and patted her head. There was a lot of food at this gathering. Just like the big pile of game that the hunting team had brought back, there were almost no repeats. There were all kinds of barbecue, steamed, stewed, braised, and so on. Everyone had also prepared some handmade snacks and some dry food, and placed them on a big table that was about 10 feet wide in the middle of the square. They piled up into a small tower so that they could eat whatever they wanted. Yin Nuashing pondered for a moment before adding the essence in Bing Air's 50 kilograms of meat. The unique flavor and the rich energy in the barbecue meat had won the favor of the villagers. Everyone gathered together and ate heartily, except for Bing Air, who was looking at her 50 kilograms of meat pitifully with tears in her eyes. After settling everyone down, Yin Nuashing ate 2 mouthfuls and stood up. She smiled and said a few words to the villagers beside her, and then walked in a certain direction. At an extra table at the edge of the square, the burly man with chest hair was drinking by himself. He smiled and looked at the people who were eating in the square. After calming down, his black priest robe had been tied up again. If you ignored the white apron around his stomach, he really looked like a priest at first glance. After Yin Nuashing walked out, Ming put down the food in his hands, leaving Bing Air alone in front of the huge table to quickly devour the food. He then lightly followed behind Yin Nuashing. "Hello, do you mind sitting here?" Yin Nuashing stood across the table and greeted the village priest who was cooking with a smile. Okay, make yourself at home. Don't mind it." The burly man with chest hair nodded with a smile. After Yin Nuashing and Ming sat down, he pointed to the sky and said with a smile, "The spirit of the starry sky above, today is a good day. The gloomy forest has left the main life sphere and is far away from the many disputes and battles. However, with the protection of the spirit of the starry sky, our compatriots far away from the main life sphere will be able to survive." Yin Nuashing blinked and exchanged glances with Ming. It seemed that even in a small village far away from the main life sphere, the priest knew what was going on there. It was just that they didn't know if this was a routine or if it was an emergency. This was a tall man about middle-aged. In the realm of the gods, he would be an ordinary person over 100 years old. It was hard to say if he was a cultivator, but here he was a man in his 40s or 50s. His body was a little fat, and his face was round and fleshy. It was not very obvious, but this heavenly official was indeed very strong, and his body was very big. Under the heavenly official robe, one could see the bulging biceps on his arms. On his face, there was a kind smile, and his black hair was tied up in a small braid behind his head. His chin was clean, and not a single beard could be seen. With this appearance, other than Yin Nuo Star being able to tell that he was a chef, without the heavenly official robe, no one would know that this guy was a heavenly official. "It is quite good. Our compatriots in the main life sphere have survived for so many years. They have been repelled time and time again. This time, they will definitely be safe." Yin Nuashing smiled and pretended to bow to the statue in the distance. He said, "Back then, I wanted to join the church, but this little girl said that I didn't look like I was cut out to be a priest, so I didn't go." Yin Nuashing said and rubbed Ming's head. The latter rolled his eyes and grinned at him, showing 2 small canine teeth. He muttered in his soul, "I didn't say that acting, of course. Hey, you can't say that. To serve the spirit of the stars, sincerity is enough." With enough piety and enough faith, anyone can become a priest. Look at me, I'm actually just a cook. While I was in the distant wind Eagle Empire, I was walking on the street and had a few too many drinks. My brain was still buzzing. Then, I was fooled into joining the church and became a priest. You see, I'm not a priest in the first place. Oh, Spirit of the stars above, I've said too much. Chest hair patted his black robe and whispered to the statue. This sentence directly stunned the two from Yun Nuo planet. How could this work? He was fooled into joining the church while walking on the street. And this guy actually said the word fooled. Is this church really reliable? Ahem, I haven't asked yet. Uncle, how should I address you? Yin Nuoxing coughed twice and changed the topic. Me? My name is Fu, and the Pope gave me the surname Qian. Chest hair puffed out his chest and said proudly. 3 seconds later, he smiled and drank a mouthful of wine. He used his black robe to wipe the glistening oil and sweat on his face. Haha, just call me Qian Fu. No need for other formalities. I hate those. To be honest, I'm still used to being called Fu. Suddenly, I have another surname. Oh, old master spirit of the stars, this surname is very good. I'm not dissatisfied. Looking at this uncle named Qian Fu, using such a powerful way of speaking, Yin Nuoxing and Ming looked at each other and mourned for the future of the Spirit of the Stars Church for a second. Then they smiled calmly. Spirit of the stars above, is it too late to join the church now? Yin Nuoxing laughed and said a sentence that was half true and half false. Ming heard this and choked. He coughed hard and his pretty face turned red. Oh, the two of you have the intention to join the church. Haha, I heard from Village Chief Dan that you are a group of adventurers who are determined to travel everywhere. Under your calm appearance, you have a restless heart. You are curious about everything and have the passion to explore to the end. Qian Fu patted his thigh and said, That's right. Adventurers travel everywhere, every day. It's impossible not to pray to the Spirit of the Stars. There are still many dangers on the Xingyuan continent. However, most people don't know much about the church, so they are curious. It's not good to join the church impulsively. Once you join the church, you have to give up a lot and serve the Spirit of the Stars with peace of mind. If you have been wandering outside for too long and want to settle down, you can wash your heart quietly next to the church or the statue for a while. You're a big family after all. Qian Fu showed an understanding expression to Yun Nuoxing and nodded. However, what he said made the latter feel cautious. It seemed that it was not as he thought. There seemed to be a rule that anyone could join the church if they wanted to. Such an impulsive act of joining the church would be advised to think about it calmly. After all, serving the Spirit of the Stars was not something that could be done casually. Yin Nuoxing nodded to show that she understood. She raised her glass and toasted him from afar. Then, she raised her head and drank. Suddenly, she threw the wine in the glass to the ground behind her. Ming looked at this action in a daze. Qian Fu did not notice the scene at all and had already drunk a glass of wine. Well, I understand. Yin Nuoxing scratched her head and said with a smile, Actually, we adventurers only pray to the Spirit of the Stars out of habit. We don't know much about it. Why don't you tell us in detail? Well, if you're not interested, let's not talk about this. Yin Nuoxing seemed to casually continue this sentence. Fortunately, Qian Fu had just said that not everyone knew about the church. He also knew that adventurers were more interested in running around. It was almost impossible for them to pray to the Spirit of the Stars with peace of mind. It was normal that they did not know much about it. When he heard that Yin Nuoxing wanted to know more about it, he nodded happily. No problem. Although I was a cook at that time until I bent my knees and joined the church, I know a lot about the Spirit of the Stars. However, the people in the village are not very interested in this. Like you, they're used to praying to the Spirit of the Stars. Everyone is sincere and pious, but its purpose has been passed down from generation to generation and has been forgotten by many people. Even praying to it is just a habit. Compared to this, everyone is more interested in calculating how to spend a day, how to spend a month, and the daily necessities. Ahem, I digress. Where do you want to start? Doctrine? Or? Yin Nuoxing pondered for a moment and smiled. Which part do you think is easy to say? Well, how about this? Just treat it as if we are ready to enter the church quietly. Tell us about the origin of the spirit of the stars, according to what you are good at." Qianfu's expression suddenly became solemn. He stood up from a chair and knelt down on one knee in front of the statue of the spirit of the stars under the slightly stunned gaze of Yin Nuoxing and Yin Nuoxing. He muttered something as if he was praying devoutly. As he spoke, Ming suddenly flapped its wings. Mei Mao blinked. She was an energy life form with divine power. At this time, she actually felt the power of faith that came from Qianfu when he was praying. That divine power made her faintly feel it. Following the doctrine, I will not deceive or hide. I will balance everything with devout and loyal faith. I will not complain about the heavy responsibility that has befallen me. I will only reveal the truth to those who desire the truth and the truth of this world. Your name hangs high in the 9 heavens. May your glory protect those who follow the will of heaven for generations. Qianfu's murmuring voice drilled into Yin Nuoxing and Yin Nuoxing's ears. They hurriedly sat upright and still. They coughed and drank a mouthful of water to rinse their mouths. Then they put on a poker face and calmly watched Qianfu sit back down on the chair. He also looked at the two solemnly and slowly spoke. That is a story from 60 million years ago. When heaven and earth were created, the galaxy descended. In the vast sky, 7 worlds were born. They faced each other from distance. In the night sky, they were the mirrors of each other. They were the 7 twins. Qianfu muttered and pointed at the brilliant starry sky above his head. At this moment, 6 huge moons were hanging high in the sky. The worlds he mentioned were the worlds they knew, which were the 7 life-bearing planets, including the Xingyuan continent. This was the limit of their knowledge and the limit of their worlds. They were far from reaching the other side of the starry sky and the end of the starry sky. The spirit of the starry sky said that the starry sky had once spoken. The earth and the 6 moons reflected each other. Heaven and earth were one, and the 6 stars were the origin. At that time, the moons were not in a row like they are now. They were bright, tidy, and incomparably huge. They occupied the entire night sky. The 6 worlds faced each other. At night, they could even reach out and greet the Moon Master. There was a land and an ocean that were as beautiful as the Xingyuan continent we are standing on. The 7 brothers corresponded to each other and carried all the things that the spirit of the starry sky had created. The footprints of all races covered the earth and the 6 moons. Later, they were connected. The spirit of the starry sky's miracle descended and connected the earth and the 6 moons into one. There were no more gaps and no more distance. The 7 worlds seemed to have always been one, peaceful and serene. But now, except for the crimson moon, the other 5 life-bearing planets have all disappeared. Yin Nuoxing whispered to Ming in his soul. Chapter 860. That was a very peaceful era. There were no wars, no natural disasters, and everyone was at peace. There were no gaps between the dozens of races, except for the occasional little pranks from the magical beasts who were also born from the same origin. But this was all forgiven by the spirit of the stars. He was magnanimous and never sided with any race. He could tolerate all the children who made mistakes in this world. This peaceful era lasted for a very, very long time. The peaceful life ended very suddenly. Without any warning, without any preparation, it appeared. The sky darkened, the stars dimmed, the sun was twisted into a cluster of light that looked like a sea urchin, the mountains were stretched into thin noodles, and anyone who touched it would turn into a weird shape in a few seconds. They might turn into a giant more than 10 meters tall that looked like a monster, or they might shrink to the size of a grain of rice, which was even smaller than the elves. However, there was no doubt that anyone who was touched by it would die within a short period of time. Even the most powerful saints of human beings and the wisest elders of elves could not survive more than 5 seconds in the hands of it. Not a single species was left behind. The land and the mountains trembled in fear because of its arrival, and they all fell apart in the end. Nobody knew what it was. They could only tell that it was a cluster of black fog that blocked the sky and the sun, or more like a black cloud. Wherever it passed, only the chaotic land was left. There was no life left. Not even a skeleton was left. It first appeared on the star origin continent under our feet, right in the center of the dim forest. Soon, it showed up on the 6 moons as well. It spread so fast that it could devour a mountain range and a forest in the blink of an eye. The human city walls couldn't stop it from spreading. By the time all the races realized what was happening and started to fight back, it had already infected 1/3 of the star origin continent. 3 of the 6 moons had already fallen silent, and countless lives on them had been killed. Before that, no one had even sent out a signal for help. They just let the black mist of death spread unscrupulously and died quietly without any sign of resistance. It was like the world was being executed quietly. It was fast, and there was no pain. The entire world was destroyed before panic was born, Yin Nuoxing said in a low voice. Qianfu nodded and let out a long sigh of relief. He patted his black robe and said, "It was also at this time that the spirit of the stars appeared. He held a brilliant golden holy staff, and endless holy light poured down from the stars like purifying light. It immediately eliminated the black fog on the 3 moons and suppressed the expansion of it on the star Yuan continent. However, the range of the explosion was too large, and the speed at which it spread was beyond everyone's imagination. The human army, the elves array masters, the giant spiritual masters, and dozens of other races' defensive lines were extremely weak against it. Their attacks had no obvious effect on it, and they could only slow down the speed of its spreading. Even with the help of the spirit of the stars and the help of all the races, the land of the star Yuan continent was still gradually eroded. People had to shrink their defensive lines. The long battle lasted for millions of years. In fact, no one knew who they were fighting. Panic spread like wildfire among all the races. However, under the pressure of all the races were very rational and didn't have any internal strife. Even though the defensive lines were shrinking day by day, and even though there were only people left on the star Yuan continent and the Crimson Moon, no one retreated. Even the spirit of the stars was getting tired day by day. The benevolent spirit of the stars didn't want to see his children being killed. He blew himself up. The spirit of the stars used all his strength and perished together with it. Yin Nuoxing sighed. Qianfu nodded and said, "You know what happened. Only the star Yuan continent and the Crimson Moon were left in the 7 worlds. A large number of races were wiped out, and less than 40% of the races were left. The connection between the Crimson Moon and the star Yuan continent was destroyed along with the spirit of the star's sleep. From then on, the Earth and the Moon could no longer communicate. The changes in the world were even more worrying. Even though it had disappeared, it left behind a strange virus. All the races gradually lost their rationality under the torture of the virus. They became thinner and thinner, and finally became evil monsters. Without the protection of the spirit of the stars, everyone could only pick up their weapons again to protect their worlds. It took 2 generations for the virus to be completely eliminated. The long war finally came to an end. The pollution left behind by it and the blood of the people who had turned into monsters dyed the ocean black, the sky dark, and the land decayed. The back of the Crimson Moon is the same as the gloomy forest on the star Yuan continent. It's the same as the gloomy forest on the star Yuan continent. The gloomy forest is the trace of the battle with it and those monsters. All the races retreated to the main life circle, and this land was completely abandoned. It was not until many years later that the polluted land regained its vitality. After the Great War, the Xingyuan continent and the Bloody Moon were at peace for a long time. Qianfu heaved a long sigh. Of course, we don't know what happened to the Bloody Moon. The remaining people slowly recovered their vitality and peace and rebuilt their former homes. There were so many races, but in the end, only the human race, which had the largest population, was left. The other races all lived cautiously in the cities of the human race. They had no home of their own, so they had to live with the human race, get married, and live together. Well, there was nothing to say about that. In that era of restoration, the other races gradually died out or were assimilated, leaving only the human race. Even now, some of our compatriots still had the blood of the other races flowing in their veins. The blood was so thin that it was almost impossible to reproduce the blood of the other races of the past. In that era of restoration, the Holy Beast race was the only one who survived. It was a very magical race. Although their intelligence was not very high, they actually resisted the erosion of it and even gained strength from it. It seemed that they knew that the other lives on the Xingyuan continent had become weak. Well, the Holy Beast race rose up one after another, but they didn't really fight with the human race to the point of life and death. It was more like a small fight, and this situation continued from that time until now. After thousands of years of fighting between the human race and the Holy Beast race, the spirit of the starry sky, who had been sleeping in the divine realm, returned. However, he was still very weak. People could sense his existence and know that the spirit of the starry sky was very weak. He no longer had the power to connect the Xingyuan continent and the bloody moon. His remaining power could only protect this world weakly and prevent it from being affected by the disaster. He didn't deal with the Holy Beast race, but left them as an experience and test for the human race. The disaster happened in that era of eternal peace. If the Xingyuan continent and the bloody moon become peaceful again, the next time it comes back, these two worlds won't have any ability to resist. Warning of war. Using war to nurture war. This is a simple and easy to understand principle. Yin Nuoxing had been using her soul to communicate with Qian Fu. The group had been listening to Qian Fu's story through their souls. Hearing this, Yao Hua could not help but murmur. Everyone nodded in agreement. I just don't know what that it is. Black fog? The black fog that brings death and corrosion. Have any of you heard anything about it? Hua Sheng murmured doubtfully. Although I don't know much about it, it's more or less the same. It is said that in the gloomy forest, there will occasionally be traces of it. The 6 moons in the sky that were originally very close to each other also became farther and farther away after the war. Until today, they are all lined up in the sky. Jun Luo Yi said softly. Strange black fog. Strange war. That idiot number 2. Do you think the fragment will be destroyed in this turmoil? Yin Nuoxing muttered. If I remember correctly, that thing is not sturdy at all. It will break easily. Break, not really. At least in the 5 elemental realms, there should not be any form that can break the fragment. At most, it will be lost in the turmoil or something. Ling smiled faintly and denied. To be honest, I thought that the spirit of the stars would be related to our fragment. If the fragment leaked its power, the leaked power would be the power of the gods. It would not be difficult for it to disrupt the thoughts of life in a star system. However, it turned out to be a physical existence. The power of the fragment will not materialize, which means that my initial guess was wrong. Then what do you think this spirit of the stars is? Yin Nuoxing turned to look at Ling, who was squeezed in the crowd. It has existed since the birth of the world. It protects 7 planets and has the power to connect them. If it was placed in 8 elemental realms, what level of life form do you think would be able to do that? Ling pondered for a moment. She had a guess, but she did not say it out loud. Instead, she asked in return. Only a god emperor who has at least mastered the power of the natural order could do it easily, or a few grandmasters of magic circles. However, the description just now said that 7 worlds are connected. I guess it has nothing to do with teleportation. So, it should be the power of a god emperor who has come into contact with the power of the natural order and can barely change the natural order. Of course, the gods can do it too, Yin Nuoxing said. If that's the case, we have the answer. Ling smiled faintly. Hearing that, Yin Nuoxing raised an eyebrow and smiled mysteriously. What do you think? Can you please say it directly? Don't use sign language. Can you please consider the intelligence of mortals like us? Everyone immediately said resentfully. Yin Nuoxing coughed dryly and said, in the 5 elemental realms, there are 2 existences who have the power of a god emperor or above in the 8 elemental realms. The first is the god race of the 5 elemental realms mentioned before, although we don't know where they are. The second is the consciousness of the star origin continent. But if it's the consciousness of the star origin continent, it can't explain why it can protect the other 6 planets that have nothing to do with it, Ling said softly. If that's the case, I have a guess. Chu Yingzhan chuckled, attracting everyone's attention. Yun Nuoxing and Ling said to the crowd, "Please begin your performance." Chu Yingzhan chuckled and said, "In fact, the spirit of the stars did not protect the other 6 moons, did it? In the end, only the Crimson Moon and the star origin continent survived. The other 5 worlds were all destroyed, so..." At this point, Yun Nuoxing and Ling understood a little. Yun Nuoxing guessed, "You think that only the star origin continent and the Crimson Moon had the power of a planet's consciousness. The other 5 moons did not, so they were the first to be destroyed. The star origin continent and the Crimson Moon, which had the protection of the planet's consciousness, lasted longer. The 2 worlds' consciousness did have the power to connect the 7 worlds together. This explanation makes sense." Ling nodded. Then she thought of something and smiled faintly. "If that's the case, then it's easy. The spirit of the stars still exists, although it's very weak. If it really is the consciousness of the star origin continent, then we just need to talk to it to find something. We can also help it recover. I think it won't refuse." "Talk to the planet's consciousness?" Everyone was stunned. "How?" "The Book of Epics. Our Book of Epics can connect to the heart of the world. It's very easy to find a planet's consciousness. As for talking to it, it's even easier." Yin Nuoxing smiled. Ming blinked and said, "Then, what if the spirit of the stars is the protoss of the 5 elemental realm?" If that's the case, Yin Nuoxing and Ling both pondered for a while. Ling said, "After all, it's a powerful race that truly exists. The protoss of the 3 elemental realm manages the order of the entire void and the faith of the mortals. The protoss of the 4 elemental realm is laissez-faire. They are only responsible for creating worlds and not managing them. As for the protoss of the 5 elemental realm, I haven't come into contact with them yet. However, most protoss are related to the faith of the mortals. The existence of the protoss will affect the faith of the mortals. Even if the protoss of the 4 elemental realm isn't good at management, they still have a large number of believers in the mortal world. The protoss of the 5 elemental realm should be no exception. Then it's easy. There are 2 ways. The first is to find a world where the protoss of the 5 elemental realm have their faith and come into contact with them. The second is to directly use the Book of Epics to send a message to the entire starry sky and alert them," Yin Nuoxing said. "Are you sure that the second method won't make us look like invaders?" Yao Hua couldn't help but ask. Yin Nuoxing and Ling were stunned. After pondering for a while, Ling took a deep breath. Maybe, or maybe not. After all, the protoss are the most powerful force in their elemental realm. If we send a signal or something, it will at most alert them. The existence of other elemental realms is unimaginable to them. This is because the worlds they know are already very large. If they were suddenly told that there are 7 other worlds that, they probably wouldn't be able to accept it for a while. No, at least a certain goddess of the 3 elemental realm already knows about the existence of the greater elemental realm. I told her about it. As for whether she believes it or not, that's another matter. However, I think she will believe it." Yin Nuoxing rolled her eyes. Everyone was silent and shocked. Apart from Ming and the others who knew, even Ling was stunned for a while. How did this guy come into contact with the protoss of the 3 elemental realm? Ahem. Chu Yingzhan coughed lightly, drawing everyone's attention back. Is the stage of listening to the story over? Yin Nuoxing pondered for a while and did not answer her. She looked at Qian Fu and said, "It really is a long story. So many years have passed, and it has not returned. It should have been completely annihilated at that time. Who knows? However, it has developed to this point. The existence of the church is only to protect the spirit of the starry sky. After all, it was the spirit of the starry sky who really stopped that great disaster." Qian Fu shrugged and continued. As for the rest of the details, some people suspected that something was left behind in the birthplace of it, which led to the Beast clan becoming stronger and stronger. There were also some people who had some thoughts that they shouldn't have and wanted to get their hands on those untouchable powers. Those who were exposed were all executed by the church. Is it in the center of the dim forest? Yin Nuoxing asked. Of course. This is something that everyone knows. Qian Fu nodded. Its existence is uncontrollable. It is absolutely foolish to investigate or look for the power that it left behind. Those bastards, oh, spirit of the starry sky above, they must be decent calm and not get angry. Those people who went astray wanted to look for the things that it might have left behind. However, the dim forest is too big, and there are few living things in it. Even Green Pine Village is only at the edge of the dim forest. Those who went deep into the dim forest were mostly lost in it. At least, after so many years, no one has confirmed that there is really something in the center of the dim forest. Anyway, I think it is nonsense. The church's mission is to protect the existence of the spirit of the starry sky and to protect the fragile peace of this world. In short, is to pull those people who have lost their heads and teach them a good lesson so that they can stop talking nonsense. The peace today is not easy to come by. The balance between the human race and the Beast clan is maintained. If it appears again, the spirit of the starry sky will not be able to stop it. I guess there is nothing we could do either. After so many years, we still haven't found an effective way to restrain it. Perhaps it has never appeared again, so there is no sense of crisis. Who knows? Qian Fu shook his head and sighed. Humans always forget the pain after the scars have healed. It is best that it does not appear again. If it appears again, whether the Xingyuan continent and the Crimson Moon can survive for a year is a problem. Yin Nuoxing and the others were silent. At this time, there was a burst of laughter in the square, and there was the sound of tables and chairs rubbing against the ground. Qian Fu raised his head and saw that the bustling atmosphere had passed. The villagers had already moved their things back in twos and threes. He stood up and apologized. Oh, it seems that this gathering is over. After all, it is Fu Yi time. Oh, sorry, I have to go and help clean up. Let's talk again when I have time. After saying that, the uncle with chest hair hurriedly ran to clean up the mess left behind by the gathering. As he ran, he opened the lapel of his black priest robe. He ran casually like a mountain of meat. Yin Nuoxing watched him leave. After a while, she stood up with Ming and stretched. What do you guys think? I think I want to take a look at the center of the dim forest, Chu Yingjian said with a grin. That's true. Yin Nuoxing nodded in agreement. She raised her head and looked at the 6 huge moons. Who would have thought that they were 6 other worlds? However, only one of the Crimson Moon was still alive. The other 5 moons were dead. The night is long. There's still time. When idiot number 2, and I use the Book of Epochs, it might cause a big commotion. Ordinary people shouldn't be able to sense it. Don't be too surprised. Yin Nuoxing reminded everyone. At this time, the gathering was coming to an end. There was nothing special, just a celebration of the food for this month. They gathered together to eat and drink to their heart's content and chatted about their daily lives. Finally, they left the gathering with satisfied smiles and went home to sleep. From time to time, they could hear someone shouting to help clean up the tables and chairs. Qian Fu and several cooks were busy working on the big pots. It was a happy and simple scene. However, when Yin Nuoxing thought of the things he had just learned, he could not help but sigh. It was really a strange place, a strange time of catastrophe, and a strange spirit of the starry sky. As for whether the fragment was on the Xingyuan continent, he and Zero had not caught anything related to them yet. As for whether the fragment was on the Xingyuan continent, he would know after a while when everything was quiet. However, it was most likely not. He had thought that this matter would be over in 2 or 3 days, but it seemed that he would have to delay it for a while. Speaking of which, do any of you remember that we should be in the secret realm right now? Everyone was suddenly speechless. Sigh. What's the point of thinking about that? Anyone who gets involved with Little Star will end up in a ghost town. Don't worry about these details. Yao Hua sighed. So, you guys are the ones who got involved, right? Yin Nuoxing could not help but roll her eyes. I'm not taking the blame for this. Chapter 861. There was a slight delay when the gathering ended. It was obviously more troublesome to clean up the pile of bones and leftover food than just setting up the stools. Yin Nuoxing and Ming scurried around the crowd and found Bing Er, who had run off to eat and drink to her heart's content. When they found her, the girl had a small mountain of meat and bones in front of her. When she saw the two of them walking over, she calmly finished the barbecued meat in her hands. Only then did she elegantly clap her hands and walk to Yin Nuoxing's side. At the same time, she stuffed a golden roasted meat leg into Yin Nuoxing's mouth. She smiled and said, "Father, try it. This is very delicious. I used my barbecued meat to exchange with them. Don't worry, Father, I've already refined the essence inside. There won't be any effects." Before Yin Nuoxing could open her mouth was stuffed by this girl. She couldn't even speak. She smiled helplessly and rubbed her head. At the same time, she finished the meat leg in her mouth in a few bites. Only then did she lead her to find the other people. Little Moon and you, came out from an unknown corner. The two little girls were in a mess, and their beautiful faces were dirty. When they saw the large pile of food next to Bing Er, they immediately cheered and pounced on it. Yin Nuoxing stared at the two little faces with her mouth agape. She took out a towel and placed it in front of the two girls who were blinded by the food. As she wiped them, she asked, "Where did the two of you go? How did it get so dark?" "We went inside and found a very, very dark hole. I pulled idiot sister and jumped in." Twisted her little face and cooperated with Yin Nuoxing's actions. After she wiped herself clean, she buried her face in Yin Nuoxing's arms and rubbed against it. Only then did she jump into Bing Er's pile of food happily. The vitality of a headache, stupid cheap sister. Little Moon sighed and obediently allowed Yin Nuoxing to wipe her face clean. Yin Nuoxing smiled and rubbed Little Moon's face. She then looked at Ming and said with a smile, "Don't say that. No matter what, she's still your two little sisters, isn't she? Although this title is a little strange. Who's her older sister?" Little Moon and Ming lowered their heads and muttered in unison. They looked at each other blankly and said together, "It's fine as long as we have Big Brother." Then the two girls were about to fight each other. Yin Nuoxing quickly picked up the two of them and put them aside. She told Bing Er to take care of Little Moon and and dragged away Ming, who was baring his fangs and brandishing his claws at Little Moon. Yin Nuoxing temporarily separated the two girls who were a little disagreeable due to their high synchronization rate. She stood in the square and looked around. She stretched her neck to look for Zero and Qin Yin. As a result, she saw a somewhat unexpected scene. Zero and Qin Yin were sitting at a long table. Opposite them were Law, village chief Dan, and several strong old men with white beards. At this time, they were holding large glasses of wine and drinking one glass after another. They drank until their faces were red, and they couldn't help laughing and chatting about something. Yin Nuoxing pulled Ming over and sat down next to Qin Yin. She looked at the people at the table and finally turned her gaze to the blushing and tipsy goddess of the Qin family. She said, "Why are you here?" Ming leaned forward and held a glass of wine that no one had drunk from. She raised her head and pressed half of her face into the wine glass. The wine glass was like a small wooden barrel, and the mouth of the glass was the size of a palm, with the old village head. Qin Yin burped, and her already flushed face turned even redder. She hurriedly lowered her head and said in a voice as soft as a mosquito's, "About us." "Village chief Dan?" Looking at the blushing face of the girl with interest, Yin Nuoxing glanced at village chief Dan and the others. Zero, Yuan Shi, and the other two men were passionately toasting with the former. They were drunk and probably couldn't even tell north from south. Ordinary people rarely come to the dim forest. Recently, there has been an undercurrent in the main life circle. The priest just said that the people who are looking for its power have been a little restless recently. Green Pine Village is on the border between the main life circle and the dim forest, and there are priests there. Village Chief Dan and the others know this, so they mistakenly thought that we were. Qin Yin said softly. She looked at the people who were drinking happily and said, But now the misunderstanding has been resolved. Zero and Yuan Shi are together. Qin Yin hesitated for a moment. She didn't know what to say. Even her eyebrows couldn't help but twitch. Seeing her like this, how could Inuashing not know what she wanted to say? Fooling, right? Fooling with your life. Qin Yin went blank for a moment, then forced a smile and nodded. Well, it's good that the misunderstanding has been resolved. Yin Nuashing sighed softly. We didn't come here to cause trouble. It's best that we don't have any conflicts with the locals. Seeing that village chief Dan and Luo were drinking happily with Zero and the other two, it was likely that their initial suspicions had disappeared. Now that the misunderstanding had been cleared, the sturdy village chief was very talkative and friendly. He was talking nonsense with the other three, and the three who were pretending to be drunk were also trying their best to fool village chief Dan. Anyway, Yinuashing did not have to get involved in these matters. He was the leader of this group of people, but now that there was another leader, he conveniently threw all these matters to the other person. Now, it seemed that it was not bad. At least Zero and the others were quite good at fooling village chief Dan. The party started more than 2 hours before nightfall. Unknowingly, it was already late at night. The 6 moons had already risen to the top of the sky. Most of the people in the square had already left. The tables and chairs were almost cleaned up. The children had already been carried home by their parents. There were only a few people left to help clean up the tables. Qian Fu and a few other cooks were cooking the smoked meat at the side. They couldn't help but steal a bite while smoking. Bing Er and the others saw this, and also went over to eat with gusto. Half of the smoked meat that was originally reserved for this month was eaten. Village Chief, Luo, it's time to clean up. Don't drink too much. You'll be laughed at if you can't wake up tomorrow morning. After packing up the smoked meat, Qian Fu carried a pile of meat on his shoulder and came to the table. He greeted Village Chief Dan and the others loudly. Hey. Okay. Just one more cup will do. Village Chief Dan's old face was glowing as he replied with a smile. A row of people stood up in unison. Qian Fu and the others were still holding the wine cup that was half the size of a wooden barrel. They raised their heads and hurriedly drank a mouthful before putting the cup on the table. Qian Fu and the others quickly cleaned up the wine cup and a large pile of bones on the table. The group of people staggered back to the village. Village head Dan and the others didn't use their star power to get rid of the alcohol, as if they were planning to stay drunk like this. Everyone looked at them and was worried that they wouldn't be able to make it back home safely tonight, instead of finding a random rock to lie down on and sleep. On the way back, Yin Nuashing called out to Bing Er and the others who were still eating. She carried the stupid angel who was knocked out by 2 cups of wine and hurriedly returned to Luo's house. The latter habitually ran to the side room and fell asleep. Yin Nuashing and the others tidied up a little and gathered on the empty first floor of the main house. They looked at each other for a long time, waiting for the villagers to fall asleep. The people of Green Pine Village had just settled down, and some of them were still awake. The full activation of the Book of the Era would cause a huge commotion. They did not want to be regarded as people with ulterior motives, so they could only wait patiently for all the signs of life in the village to fall asleep. They did not wait for long. Perhaps they had used up all their energy during the party, or perhaps they had fallen asleep from the alcohol. In short, the group of people sat and waited for about a quarter of an hour before the last sign of life in the village fell asleep. In the hall, Yin Nuashing and Zero and 2 stood opposite each other, holding 2 balls of light in their hands. The 2 balls of light slowly touched each other under their control and fused together like water droplets touching each other. The balls of light also grew in size. Then, rings of light appeared on the top of the balls of light and spread to the bottom. When they passed through the middle, they would expand. Book of the Era, Heart of the World, Interfere. Yin Nuashing and Zero shouted in unison and slowly formed a hand seal. Then, the balls of light seemed to have received an order and suddenly expanded. The flashing rings of light outside the balls of light stopped abruptly. A beam of light about 10 feet in size burst out from the top of the balls of light, penetrated the roof, pierced the sky at a speed far faster than light, and finally shot into the starry sky. Hum! When the tiny beam of light reached the limit of its range, it suddenly trembled. The entire beam of light shattered and turned into a transparent wave, shooting toward the star zone. Yin Nuoxing and the others on the Star Origin continent immediately sensed the speed of light. The transparent wave of light was like a ripple of water. It only shook the space for a moment before quickly vanishing. It was so fast that it could not be seen with the naked eye. Only the people from the 8 Origin realm could catch this strange wave of light. The people on the Star Origin continent and the Crimson Moon might have sensed it a little, but they could not find out what had happened. They only faintly felt that something had passed through them. The wave of light spread very quickly. In an instant, it had spread through the entire solar system on the Star Origin continent. Then, it shot toward the depths of the star zone. In just a short while, it had reached the edge of the world. Everything it touched turned into energy information and was fed back to the balls of light. Even the chaotic desolation was no exception. The speed of the Book of the Era's detection was close to limitless. It could spread to the entire star zone in an instant. No matter how far away or how small the matter was, it could detect it. Even the residual energy of an energy explosion from millions of years ago could be sensed as long as it was not completely destroyed. It could even recreate the scene of the explosion. Yin Nuoxing and the others did not want to use such a large-scale scan. However, only a scan of such a scale could be done in detail. They had not sensed anything when they scanned the Star Origin continent a few times before, which made them feel helpless. It was only under such circumstances that they took the risk to use the full power of the scan. However, the space and structure of the 5 Origin realm were very fragile. They only dared to use such a super scan once in the same world. If they use it again, it might lead to a fatal collapse in some parts of the world. For example, some laws might be changed, or life forms that should not exist would appear. They did not want to cause that kind of trouble. This is the 9 Shrines group. We have already observed. No, we can't see anything. Anyway, we can feel it. Just 3 seconds ago, we tried to sense as you said. Hiss, my head is about to explode. Is the entire starry sky being fed back to us as information? Yao Hua gasped in their souls. Everyone was stunned. They hurriedly patted their chests. Fortunately, they did not touch it. What's the result? Lin Sheng and the others were more concerned about the result. They did not try to do what Yin Nuoxing and the others said. By touching the white light, they could temporarily connect their minds with the Book of the Era and feel everything that the Book of the Era observed. How much information was there in the entire world? Anyway, their minds had been suppressed to the half-demon level. It would be difficult for them to bear. They could tell from Yao Hua's convulsions. The impact of the white light lasted for 3 seconds before it disappeared. Yin Nuoxing and Zero opened their eyes at the same time. Blue light flashed across their eyes, as if they were reading information. After a long while, Zero took a deep breath and nodded at Yin Nuoxing. Then, she grabbed the Book of the Era and turned into a golden shadow that shot out. The situation is... Yin Nuoxing sighed. Well, the situation is a little confusing. Yin Nuoxing's face twitched, and he let out a long sigh. We found some news related to the fragment, and it's bad news. At the edge of this galaxy, we found a huge energy shockwave. It's more than 10 million years old, and almost nothing is left. We almost couldn't sense it. If I'm not mistaken, it should be the shockwave produced when the fragment was moving. That shockwave contains the fragment's own power. As for the destination, we don't know yet, but we do know that the fragment should have passed through the world barrier and gone to another world. Does that mean that the fragment is no longer in this world? Yuanshi frowned slightly. We can confirm that, but it seems... Yin Nuoxing's expression was strange. The fragment was transferred away. It didn't grow legs and run away. Transferred? By whom? Yao Hua's expression was strange. I'm not sure about that. Zero just found an interesting place and went there with the Book of Epics to read. For the time being, there's no plan of action. There's no clue. We can only wait and see what special news he brings back tomorrow morning. Yin Nuoxing shook his head. The discovery of such a clue gave him a headache. The 9th fragment had indeed landed in the galaxy where the Xingyuan continent was located. If there was no accident, it must have fallen on the Xingyuan continent. However, they couldn't find a trace of the fragment's power. Yin Nuoxing and Zero speculated that the fragment had been leaking energy ever since it left the mausoleum world. It was in an unstable state. The leakage was very slow and weak, probably no more than the amount of sand falling from an hourglass. It was so weak that it was almost undetectable. The Book of Epics could only find a trace of weak energy in the starry sky when it was fully activated. Moreover, it was carried away by another energy to an unknown place. As for how it escaped from the Xingyuan continent to the starry sky, there was no trace of it left behind. It was completely annihilated. Even the Book of Epics couldn't detect it. This gave the two people who had the power to change the rules of the five-element realm a headache. They wanted to dig a hole and bury themselves in it. It was proven that being good at fighting could not solve everything. If you were good at fighting, then you couldn't solve anything. You couldn't smash someone's house in a game of hide-and-seek. I say, can't we use the 8 fragments that have already fused to sense the fragment? Chu Yingzhan spread her hands helplessly. This world is so big. We might have to cross to another world. The void is endless. How long would it take to find it? We can sense it within a range of 10 meters. Yin Nuoxing sighed. Everyone was even more speechless. They could see it from 10 meters away. They couldn't possibly bury it underground. Now, it was a problem of crossing worlds. The void is infinitely big. Although his boss, the Sea of Time, is still behind him, the void is infinitely big. The volume of a world in the void is about the size of a grain of rice. If the fragment is directly thrown into the next world, it's fine. We can find it easily. However, if it's thrown into the void, it's a chaotic space where the concept of time is unclear. God knows where we'll be thrown to. Yin Nuoxing sighed heavily and scratched her head in distress. Everyone looked at each other and heaved a long sigh. There was no way they could do this. Where did Zero go? Nightmare turned around and looked at the entrance of the main room. He couldn't help but ask when he didn't see Zero return. It's looking for the consciousness of Xingyuan continent, Yin Nuoxing muttered, which surprised everyone. My guess was right. The spirit of the stars is the consciousness of Xingyuan continent. I just sensed it with the Book of Epics. The consciousness of this planet is as weak as a candle in the wind. The same goes for the one on Crimson Moon. But I was wrong about one thing. The other 5 planets originally had consciousness of their own, but they were already eaten. Compared to Crimson Moon and Xingyuan continent, those 5 planets weren't that strong. When the catastrophe happened, those 5 were the first to die. Only the consciousnesses of Xingyuan continent and Crimson Moon are lingering at death's door. What will happen if the planet's consciousness is destroyed? Little Moon asked nervously. Nothing will happen. The residents of Xingyuan continent and Crimson Moon will continue to live their lives. This isn't the core of a planet. If you remove it, the entire planet will be destroyed. Just think of the planet's consciousness as the intelligence of a divine object. Now that it's been erased, it's still a divine object. The core of a planet is the core of the divine object's power. If you remove it, the entire planet will be gone. Just think of it that way. Yin Nuoxing rubbed the girl's head and explained softly. Everyone said in unison, "Oh, we should have understood earlier." It was late at night, and the large-scale detection did not wake up the people of Green Pine Village. Other than Yao Hua and Lin Sheng's eyewitness reports, they did not discover much movement in the mainland. The speed of the detection was immeasurable, and it was impossible to directly observe it. Unless one's perception was sensitive, they would not even know that it had appeared. After hearing some bad news, no one was in the mood to rest. Yin Nuoxing paced back and forth in the house with his hands behind his back. He looked restless. Ming and the others shook their heads as they watched him walk back and forth. Yao Hua and the others set off for the center of the main life circle that very night. They were a little concerned about the red light that fell from the Crimson Moon that Lin Sheng had mentioned. As for Lin Sheng and the others, they were now lost deep in the mountains. The group of people had followed the place where the monster tide broke out and killed the monsters until they were crying for their parents. They had rushed into the mountains, and now they were all lost. After watching Yun Nuoxing pacing around for a long time, Chu Yingxian finally could not stand it anymore. She stood up and knocked Yun Nuoxing into Ming's arms with a 1-inch punch. She scolded softly, "Damn it! If you keep pacing around, I'm going to faint. Can't be at peace with that percent at asterisk and..." Anyway, even if the world explodes, it won't explode on your head. Stop pacing around. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. He got up from Ming's arms speechlessly and sighed. "I say, have you forgotten how strong you are now?" Chu Yingxian was puzzled. The peak strength of the 5 elements realm is the demonic realm, which is the extent to which we are currently suppressed. However, the star origin continent is located in the lower realm of the 5 elements realm. The energy there is thin, and the peak strength is not even at the 4th tier of the immortal realm, Yin Nuoxing said faintly. Chu Yingxian's brows furrowed deeply. Logically speaking, we should also be suppressed to the 4th tier of the immortal realm, but we aren't. The only explanation is that the laws here have been disrupted. The shard might have disrupted the laws here, so we still maintain the strength of the demonic realm. Someone was worried that the shard would affect the stability of this world, so they had no choice but to send it away. The shard is already in an unstable state, and its power can erupt at any time. It might even have caused a small disturbance, which is enough to create a loophole in the laws of the 5 elements realm. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, stunned. When the power of the primordial realm exploded, it did not mean that it could only destroy a few dozen worlds nearby, but that its range of destruction should only be as large as a few dozen worlds. But now, we know that the shard is somewhat unstable. It is leaking power like a sieve. That explosion might be mixed with the power of the shard, and when the power of the primordial realm is combined with the power of the shard, its power would be equivalent to a full-strength attack from a heavenly god. Whether or not the hundreds or thousands of worlds around us can survive is a problem. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. It's enough to blow a hole in the barrier of the 5 elements realm, and then pass through to the 4 elements realm or the 6 elements realm. It can do it again in a short period of time. Oh, the point is, I don't know if we're in the range of the explosion. A moment later, Chu Yingxian knelt in the corner of the hall, her pretty face pale as she kept muttering to herself. Next to her was a piece of white paper filled with words, and the title was the word "will." After hearing the serious consequences, she did not think that she would be able to go back alive. "All right, calm down." Yin Nuoxing patted the shoulder of the girl who had curled up into a ball and sighed. "There's still some time before the explosion. Perhaps we don't know the exact time, and we don't know to what extent the power of the primordial realm has been accumulated. The fragment should have had a small explosion in this star system. Although the power of the primordial realm it carried won't be completely cleared in one go, it can still release a lot and continue to accumulate. However, in this way, the extent of the explosion should be even more powerful." Yin Nuoxing originally wanted to comfort her, but the more he spoke, the worse it became. Everyone's faces turned paler as they listened. Chu Yingxian looked up with a heavy expression, grabbed Yin Nuoxing's arm, and under the latter's dumbfounded gaze, opened her mouth and bit down hard. "Ow! Ah!" A moment later, Yin Nuoxing looked at his hand that was almost bleeding from the bite and gasped in pain. On the side, Ming obediently took out a bandage and wrapped it around Yin Nuoxing's hand. He couldn't help but send a soul message to Yin Nuoxing. "Big brother, don't talk too much. If you continue, everyone will be scared to death." Yin Nuoxing laughed dryly. "I was wrong." Chapter 862. The Book of Epochs scanned all the information on the other 6 planets in this galaxy. On the 5 destroyed planets, there are traces of life left behind. The youngest planet has a history of more than 30 million years. It's too long ago, so the time might not be accurate. As for the planet that was destroyed the earliest, it might have been extinct for more than 50 million years. These are all things that happened during the cataclysm, so let's not talk about them for now. In addition, every planet has a minor disorder in the laws. the world itself will repair itself. The various errors that appear in the world, such as shattered space, disrupted time, and erroneous laws, will all repair themselves. Although it won't be very fast, it won't be so slow either. According to the remnant energy left behind when the fragment was sent away, the fragment should have been sent away 30 million years ago. That turmoil caused the laws of the entire galaxy to be erroneous, and it hasn't been completely repaired yet. There's no doubt that the fragment exploded once in this galaxy. It should have been a small explosion that didn't destroy this world, but it disrupted the laws here. The exact time of the explosion is undetectable. The power of the primordial realm comes and goes quickly. Every bit of power that erupts turns into a pure energy impact that doesn't leave many traces. There aren't any obvious scars found on the 7 life-bearing planets. The only traces that are left are caused by the original inhabitants themselves. The impact of the fragment's explosion is equivalent to the impact of the creation of heaven and earth. Even if it didn't directly hit this galaxy, the star origin continent, where the fragment fell, didn't show any signs of being impacted at all. The entire galaxy is undamaged. Then where did the explosive power go? Was it eaten? After everyone calmed down, they looked at Yin Nuoxing walking around slowly and listened to his analysis of the current situation. However, the more they listened, the more they felt a headache coming on. Then one day, it couldn't hold back the primitive power in its body. It tried for a long time, but it still couldn't hold it in properly, so it released a fart and exploded in the galaxy where the star origin continent was located. The scale of the explosion was unknown, and there were no traces of the explosion left at the scene. However, the laws of this galaxy had been changed, which proved that the explosion had indeed happened. It was just that no one saw the process of the explosion, and there were no traces left. Then, the fragment's fart exposed its hiding place and was discovered by someone. At that time, the fragment was already at the edge of the galaxy, so it might have blown itself out. There was no way to investigate this point. Anyway, it was discovered by someone. That person felt that this thing was too dangerous, so he hurriedly dug a hole in the world barrier and threw the fragment out. That's all. We just don't know where the energy from the explosion went, and we don't know who that person is. Yuanxi concluded, the laws have changed. It's useless to investigate the facts. We came here by following the traces of the fragment in the beginning, and it's confirmed that the fragment fell on the star origin continent, not before the birth of this world. There's no problem with that, right? Yes. Yin Nuoxing nodded. Then, here's the question. Yuanxi sighed. What did the fragment do here? Even if you ask me, I can't. Yin Nuoxing glanced at him with an unnatural expression. The timeline is a little unclear. We don't even know when the fragment fell, when it exploded, or what form it took. Of course, the most important thing is who that person is. I think we'll know where the fragment when if we find that person, Yuanxi said. Brother, what is it? Ming suddenly asked, interrupting everyone's thoughts. Huh, are you referring to the unidentified black fog that appeared during the Great Calamity? Yin Nuoxing was stunned. She didn't understand why the girl mentioned something that didn't seem relevant. I don't know. There's no more information. The Book of Epics didn't find any traces of it on the 7 life-bearing planets. The Great Calamity came suddenly. It was only when the 3 planets, including their consciousness, fell and the star origin continent lost a third of its land that they suddenly reacted. It was only then that the starry sky spirit and the other planet's consciousness started to resist. They didn't notice it before that. Ming's soft voice floated out. Yes. Yin Nuoxing nodded. She looked at her with her colorful eyes, indicating for her to continue. Brother, you just said that the Book of Epics can only be used once. If it's used again, Ming looked at Yin Nuoxing. The 5 elemental realms are very fragile. They can't withstand the powerful scan of the Book of Epics. If it's used again, the entire world will experience a fatal collapse. The laws will change on a large scale, and life forms that don't belong to the 5 elemental realms will appear. For example, life forms that have the power of the 8 elemental realms or life forms that belong to the 8 elemental realms, Yin Nuashing said. Then, will the explosion of the fragment's power combined with the power of the elemental realms cause such an outcome? Yin Nuashing was stunned. Blue light flashed across her eyes. She seemed to have entered a state of deep thought. Everyone saw that she seemed to have woken up, so they subconsciously shut their mouths. They didn't dare to disturb her. Moments later, Yin Nuashing sat down cross-legged. She placed her hands on her knees and tapped her fingers on her knees meaninglessly. After pondering for a long time, she slowly raised her head under everyone's nervous gazes. She mumbled for a while before saying, "It should be possible." However, the level of destruction caused by the Book of Epics is different from the level of explosion caused by the fragment. The turbulence caused by the Book of Epics is more like drilling a hole in the laws. It uses its own power to disturb a portion of the areas it spreads to. It's equivalent to the mode of a disease. There's still some time before the virus erupts. But if the fragment erupts, it will bombard space, time, tangible, intangible, and other levels. This includes the level of laws. The explosion is rapid, and the effects are difficult to eliminate, Yin Nuashing said slowly. She was also pondering if there was any difference. In terms of death with a reprieve, it's different from immediate execution. Nightmare crossed his arms and nodded. Everyone, a very accurate summary. You think its appearance is caused by the fragment eruption? Yin Nuashing looked at Ming and asked. Ming nodded and said, I have such a guess, but it's only a guess. There's no evidence. Brother, how powerful is the planet's consciousness? Can it withstand an attack from a life form that doesn't belong to the 5 elements realm? I'm not sure about its specific strength. I've never seen it before. However, from what Uncle Qianfu said, the 2 planets' consciousnesses destroyed it completely. It should have a certain level of strength. After all, it's the consciousness of an entire planet. It's much more powerful than the original life form on it, Yin Nuashing said. Then we're back to the topic. What is it? Yuanshi made a timely turn in his thoughts. Everyone, at least for now, there's no such life form in the 8 elements realm. Black fog? I've never heard of it. Yin Nuashing shook his head and looked at Yu-Er. Speaking of black fog, he always thought of demonic qi. Yu-Er doesn't know either. If it's demonic qi, Brother Yun, do you think a planet's consciousness in the 5 elements realm can withstand it? Yu-Er threw herself into Yin Nuashing's arms and said with a grin. Yin Nuashing shook his head. Not to mention demonic qi, even the people in the 5 elements realm wouldn't be able to withstand an attack from immortal qi. Even the planet's consciousness was no exception. Hey, you all think that it is a life form. Why do I feel that it is just the aftermath of the fragment's explosion? Chu Yingzhan suddenly stood up and said excitedly, the fragment's explosion is mixed with its own power and 4 kinds of restless primordial realm power. The harem guy just said that if it fully explodes, it's enough to directly destroy a large part of the void. What if it's just a little bit of the explosion? What if it's just a part of the energy that accidentally leaked out and wasn't sealed in time? Or more completely, that it is the energy leaking out of the fragment and not the fragment's energy exploding. But will this cause a change in the laws? Everyone fell silent and looked at Yin Nuashing. At this moment, the latter was also shocked by Chu Yingzhan's words, but he didn't immediately answer. He communicated with Zero in the dim forest. Zero borrowed the Book of Epics to do some calculations and gave an answer. Yes, even if it's just the energy leaking out of the fragment, that energy is enough to cause a change in the laws. Look, Chu Yingzhan smiled and spread out her hands. The puzzle pieces have been put together. So, it is just the power that leaked out from the fragment, and it may have been mixed with the power of the 4 primordial realms. That alone was enough to cause the extinction of almost 6 planets. Yuanshi's face twitched. She thought for a moment and said, Then, who was the one who sent the fragment away? The spirit of the starry sky and the consciousness of the scarlet moon. Zero's voice suddenly rang out in everyone's souls, stunning them. Yin Nuashing was the first to react. You found it. Zero chuckled. They were in the deepest part of a cave, so deep that it was almost connected to the heart of the starry sky continent. In front of him was a palace passageway built with golden light. The door of the passageway was hundreds of meters tall, and there were many oval-shaped stairs that collapsed downwards, forming a square that was more than 30 meters deep. Brilliant golden light swam around the oval-shaped edges and flew past the palace passageway. The entire scene in front of them was vast and magnificent. It gave off an indescribable feeling of majesty, making it hard for them to breathe. I see it. It's a magnificent scene. You should come and take a look. This is the scene of the planet's consciousness being born. Although it's illusory, it's still very impressive. Zero turned around with a smile. In front of him was the deepest part of the Golden Palace passageway. In the room in front of him was a boundless starry sky. For pieces of glass with mysterious runes drawn on them, with white lines propped up in even space, as if they were built in the starry sky. In the center of the glass room was a sphere that was about 10 meters wide. If one looked closely, they could see the outline of the Earth and the ocean. It was a model of a planet and a model of the starry sky continent. The glowing sphere, which was about 10 feet in size, was slowly rotating. From time to time, a black flame would erupt from the center of the sphere. The spirit of the starry sky, the consciousness of the starry sky continent, is still alive. According to what you just said, it is a kind of energy. Although the spirit of the starry sky tried its best to destroy it, unfortunately, the spirit of the starry sky was corroded by Zero said. It lost its mind and went crazy. Yun Nuoxing thought of the person that Qian Fu said had been turned into a monster. It didn't go crazy. It just got weaker and weaker as it fought. Guess what happened next? Zero smiled mysteriously. That energy was mixed with Father's energy. It was very weak, and diluted countless times. It's lucky that the consciousness of the planet could hold on. Well, now that I've removed it, the spirit of the starry sky will recover on its own given some time. It is a mutated energy formed by quarter moon's energy that leaked out from the fragment and the energy of the 4 primordial realms. It should be. Anyway, you just need to know that it is very powerful. It has the power to change the rules, and its destructive power is also very abnormal. Fortunately, only a little of it leaked out, and it only destroyed 5 planets. If it completely exploded, the consequences would be more serious than what idiot number 1. Of course, we'll talk about it in terms of multiples, Zero said with a smile. Yin Nuoxing understood something when she heard this. After the spirit of the starry sky and the red moon's consciousness destroyed, they threw the fragment out of this world. Well, it's a little different. Zero reached out and touched the sphere. The sphere trembled slightly, as if it had its own consciousness. It smiled and said, "No matter how strong the spirit of the starry sky and the red moon's consciousness are, they don't have the power to throw the fragment out. It was the 2 of them who guided it, and the fragment used its own power to break through the world barrier. Then the fragment was guided into the void, and it was not thrown out." What about the fragment? Where did it go? Does the spirit of the starry sky know? Yin Nuoxing asked hopefully. Zero did not answer immediately. He looked straight at the sphere. The sphere spun a few times on the spot, and waves of energy were transmitted into Zero's mind. After he received the information, he was slightly stunned, and his expression became a little strange. I don't know. Back then, when the astral spirit and the crimson moon were indirectly banishing the fragment, they had memorized the coordinates of the destination. However, in order to prevent people with bad intentions from coming into contact with the coordinates and releasing this source of disaster, the 2 of them worked together to hide the coordinates. In order to decipher the location of the coordinates, Zero paused, his cheeks twitching. Hurry up. Don't keep us in suspense, Yin Nuoxing said grumpily. Zero forced a smile and heaved a long sigh. He said, "We have to recreate the arrangement of the planets in this galaxy 60 million years ago. That is, the time when the 7 worlds of Xingyuan continent faced each other from a distance. We can't make any mistakes." Huh? Everyone was stunned. It's the 6 moons in the sky. They weren't arranged horizontally at first, but the two planets' consciousness used the remaining power of the 5 planets and the power of the stars to disrupt the orbits of the 7 planets. As long as we can recreate the original arrangement, there will be no problem. However, the two of them don't have that power now, so we have to do it ourselves. That's what the spirit of the starry sky told me, Zero said. What did you tell it? Did it believe you? Yinuashing was a little confused. The thing called the source of disaster had destroyed 5 planets back then. If the spirit of the starry sky was so nice, why would it let them touch it? Wasn't it afraid that they would release the fragment again? I removed the fragment from the spirit of the starry sky. So I pulled out the power that was entangling it and told it where we came from. The spirits of the stars knew about our arrival on the day we landed, and we carried a world-crossing aura. While the spirits of the stars and the other planet consciousness couldn't control this world-crossing power, they could tell. To put it simply, it could tell that we were foreign species at first glance. We weren't originally from the Starfield continent, and we didn't belong to their world, so it judged us as beings from other worlds that had crossed the world barrier. Well, there was a slight error in that we had crossed the primordial realm to come here, but it didn't matter. I told it that those things were pollutants that we had lost trillions of years ago, and that if we didn't recycle them, dozens of worlds would explode. Then it told me everything. Zero chuckled. Yinuashing took a deep breath. All right, crossing worlds and crossing the primordial realm are both transboundary. There's nothing wrong with that. After all, they're foreign species that were discovered by the planet's consciousness. Then, here comes the question. Do we have a celestial master here? To be precise, we have a celestial master, the kind that can shift the position of the stars. Everyone fell silent and covered their faces. All right, it's just a joke. Zero, and I have the power of a natural order, so it shouldn't be a problem for us to use it temporarily. However, we have to prepare for it in the next 2 days, Yinuashing said with a smile. Everyone was stunned for a moment. They lowered their heads and picked up their water bottles at the same time. Yinuashing said, well, let's adjust the atmosphere. Calm down. Chapter 863. Ahem. This is the Crimson Moon. The Crimson Moon is here. The Crimson Moon is in the sky. Can you receive this soul message from here? Is there any delay? A gentle breeze blew on the red land, stirring up the red dust. Yinuashing rubbed the ground under her feet, raised her head, and looked at the starry sky through the thin sky. At this time, she was in a backlit position. The sun could not reach here, so the sky was dark. The night was dark, and there were 6 huge moons hanging in the distant night sky. This was very unusual. The Crimson Moon was the planet farthest from the sun in this galaxy. She could not see the 6 planets, including the Xingyuan continent, at night. Perhaps she could see them in the early morning or evening, but now it was late at night. The Crimson Moon was a little too far away. Even if she could see the Xingyuan continent, it should be just a bright spot. But soon, the consciousness of the Crimson Moon explained to her, the 6 moons in the starry sky are the scene left behind when the space is frozen. In fact, the 6 moons are not arranged in a row. They are just a clue left behind in case we forget it in the future. It was an elegant female voice. It was the consciousness of the Crimson Moon. Although she was weak, she could still communicate with the spirit of the starry sky from a distance. She also knew what the spirit of the starry sky knew. After Yinuashing cleared the black fog around the Crimson Moon's planet, she gladly agreed to help. Ahem, this is the yellow one. In fact, I want to say the yellow one is poop. Boss, the formation you gave me has been printed on the ground. There are still 3 hours before dawn in the Xingyuan continent. Let's finish it quickly and go back to sleep. Nightmare's voice sounded in her soul after Yinuashing's voice. Yinuashing cut him off. She could not help but roll her eyes and scold. Zero, and I have to run around to send you to heaven. Can't you let us rest for a while? Is the Xingyuan continent ready? Only the Crimson Moon, and it can't make any mistakes. Will we screw it up? Do you want to change positions? Hey, little star, don't worry. Zero is already grumbling that number 1 is fussy and fussy. We have no problems at all. You, on the other hand, did you make it? Why don't we send 2 people up? Yao Hua's voice rang out. No problem. Stupid Angel is here. The two of us can handle this. As soon as Yun Nuoxing finished speaking, he felt a faint light beside him. A golden holy light shone out, and Ming came out of his body and landed beside him. The golden Mei Mao looked at him with tears in her eyes. Our Ming Ming is the smartest. I was just saying it casually. With a bitter smile, Yun Nuoxing pulled Ming into her arms and rubbed her head. The little girl immediately smiled through her tears. It's been a long time. When I look back, my old friends are all gone. Only the starry sky spirit and I are still here. The crimson moon sighed softly, and the ethereal voice echoed in Yun Nuoxing's heart. Yun Nuoxing was silent. The crimson moon and the starry sky spirit had been entangled by it. Unknowingly, tens of millions of years had passed. They had been fighting against this pervasive power, and they were getting weaker and weaker. Once they were infected by it, they could not get rid of it. If Yun Nuoxing and Zero did not have a little connection with it, they would not have been able to get rid of it. I'm sorry. This is something that belongs to us, but as soon as Yun Nuoxing said that, the ethereal voice rang in his heart and interrupted him. There is no need to apologize, young deity. All living things have their own will. Everything that happens in this world is predestined. The calamity is not something we can control. At that time, all of you were far from being born. No one wants to see such a thing happen. But once it happens, there is no need to care about what should have been. To borrow your words, since it is a fact, there is no need to pursue it. Yun Nuoxing blinked his eyes in a daze. When he came here, he had muttered once, but he didn't expect to be heard. Can you tell us in detail? What happened at that time? A slight buzzing sound echoed in his mind. Yun Nuoxing slightly relaxed his body and mind. The crimson moon's consciousness came, allowing him to see the scene clearly. It was a peaceful kingdom. It was a vast land connected by 7 worlds. Serenity was the main melody. There was no chaos, no disaster. Thousands of races lived and worked in peace. There was no racial discrimination, no disagreements, and no segregation. The biggest conflict was at the level of smashing, looting, and burning. It was a beautiful kingdom, and it would be a peaceful kingdom forever. If there was no accident, no sudden accident, perhaps everything would go on like this forever. It was a very sudden day. On the Xingyuan continent, in the middle of the 7 worlds, a strong light suddenly burst out from its back. The black, ominous light covered the sky and the sun, eroding the source of life above its head. The sun turned black in an instant. The black light was chaotic and violent. It was projected onto the 7 worlds in an instant. The light that symbolized violence and chaos shattered the false peace. The disaster did not break out all at once, but it gave birth to another phenomenon that made everyone uneasy: Fuyi. The illumination from the black sun shortened the day and night. The self-rotation of the planet was out of balance. What followed was the breaking of the balance of all things. Life slowly weakened, and countless species with low intelligence fell one after another. However, this kind of superficial destruction was not taken seriously. The world was still so peaceful, except for some people who wondered why the sky turned dark so quickly. At that time, the consciousness of the 7 planets, including the starry sky spirit, had already joined forces to deal with the abnormal sun. However, before they could do anything, the sun had already returned to normal. In other words, it had only borrowed a few rays of sunlight to send itself evenly to the 7 worlds. Then, the starry sky spirit and the others felt that something was wrong with themselves. To put it simply, they felt that they were sick. With the arrival of the first Fuyi, disaster followed. The mountains, rivers, sky, and oceans became extremely unstable under the invisible erosion of it. From then on, the starry sky spirit and the others felt that their control over the world had weakened. The 7 worlds went crazy under their eyes. Earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions, tornadoes, and sometimes even whole mountains collapsed into the Earth's crust. Even the Earth was cracking. A destructive will dominated everything, controlling them to self-destruct. Then, It appeared in front of everyone in the form of an overwhelming black fog. What happened after that was similar to what Yin Nuoxing understood. Countless lives rose up in resistance. The will of the 7 planets destroyed everything. The creatures mutated, and so on. It was basically the same as what he understood, except that this time, he had an accurate image to understand more fully. The starry sky spirit and scarlet moon did not disappear immediately after exhausting all of their strength. Compared to their 5 siblings, they were much better. They only fell into a deep sleep, but even in that state, they did not stop fighting it. The appearance of Fu Yi was also related to it. It did not have a physical body. It kept switching between various physical forms. Sometimes it was a cloud of fog, sometimes it was a liquid, and sometimes it was a hard rock. It did not have a basic form. It wrapped around their bodies like maggots. Its power leaned towards chaos, disrupting their control over the planet itself. It used the sun to erase the rules of the galaxy, causing the galaxy to become chaotic and dim the stars. Even the starry sky spirit's own existence was used to fight against it. It was an extremely chaotic power. After thousands of years of fighting, the 2 of them had exhausted all of their strength, and they were almost about to fall into a deep sleep. However, before they fell into a deep sleep, the starry sky spirit found the source of the illness. It was a shiny ball that looked like a model of a planet. It was entrenched in the depths of the starry sky continent, constantly releasing the chaotic black fog. The starry sky spirit and scarlet moon did not know what it was. They only knew that it was constantly releasing an aura that made them feel uneasy. They worked together to remove it from the starry sky continent and threw it to the edge of the galaxy. After that, Scarlet Moon, who was more cautious, discussed with the starry sky spirit and carefully used the power of the fragment to break through the world barrier and banish it into the void. It was also after that the starry sky spirit and Scarlet Moon barely managed to fight against the remaining black fog. They persisted for many years until Yin Nuoxing and the others came today to completely destroy it. This is really... Yin Nuoxing smacked her lips, not knowing what to say. This tells us that we have to treat the root of the illness first. Yao Hua nodded. Everyone looked at each other, rolled up their sleeves, and suppressed Yao Hua from all directions. Hearing the cries and howls coming from the soul, Yin Nuoxing could not help but sigh. You won't die if you don't seek death. We don't know what it is. It seems to be a living thing, but it's energy. After tens of millions of years of fighting, it has figured us out and knows how to deal with our stubborn resistance. It always wants to devour us, but we don't know what it is. It's chaotic, violent, and disorderly. It doesn't seem like something that could be born in this world. We can't detect it because it is not a product of this world. We don't know its appearance. If I'm not wrong, it already existed before the sun shone here, Scarlet Moon said softly. There wasn't much fluctuation in her voice. After a while, she warned Yin Nuoxing and the others, young gods, if you want to deal with it, don't come into direct contact with it. It can devour everything, even if it's an existence that can't be recognized. Yin Nuoxing and Ming looked at each other, smiled, and said, Don't worry, we'll be fine. You guys, on the other hand, are already fine? Scarlet Moon's consciousness let out a soft buzz to show its closeness, and said, We're fine now. After it is completely eliminated, we'll gradually recover our strength. Fu Yi will also disappear. However, the children below have already gotten used to this kind of life with the arrival of Fu Yi. Perhaps we can preserve this kind of situation. Yin Nuoxing smiled, looked at the starry sky on both sides, and sighed. Now that the chat was over, it was time to get to work. Then we'll get to work. You guys just need to hold your positions. Scarlet Moon's consciousness let out a soft buzz, and Yin Nuoxing smiled, pulled Ming, and soared into the sky. The power of space flashed, and in an instant, they arrived at the top of Scarlet Moon's atmosphere. She waved her hand, and a few light screens appeared beside her. The images were of several other planets with life. Looking at those planets from afar, several tens of thousands of feet large magic formations were rotating on the ground, and surging energy was constantly emitted, filling the entire magic formation and the entire planet. Ahem, ahem, this is Planet 1. Planet 1, this is Planet 1. Can you receive it from Xingyuan continent? Can you receive it from sh*t yellow? As for the others, oh, I won't go over in a bit. Anyway, if you can hear it, just squeak. Yin Nuashing coughed softly. Everyone, squeak. It's okay, let's finish our work, wash up, and sleep. Hey, I don't think you'll have time to sleep after we finish our work. We still haven't found where the fragment is. Yin Nuashing said grumpily with her hands on her hips. Everyone glared at her, and Yin Nuashing hurriedly moved her face away from the light screen. She coughed softly in her soul. Ahem, let's not talk about it anymore. Let's get to work. As Yin Nuashing finished speaking, everyone took a deep breath. They recalled what Yin Nuashing and Zero had just taught them. After a moment of silence, they raised their hands at the same time and slowly changed their hand seals. Zero and Yin Nuashing looked at each other through the light screen, nodded, and took a deep breath. 5 halos appeared behind them at the same time. They stretched out their hands and pressed on the void, and their auras began to surge. Ming was watching from the side. When Yin Nuashing stretched out her hand, she felt that something had changed. It was a power that she couldn't sense at the moment. Although she couldn't sense it, she knew that something was changing at the moment. It was the rules. They were in this world, and they could sense that the rules of this world had changed. However, the billions of people below didn't feel the same. They were the original life forms of this world, and the changes of the rules of this world were closely related to them. It was also because of this that no one could sense the changes of the rules. No matter what happened, they would take it for granted. Even if they woke up and found that the sun was gone, no one would cry out in surprise. They would continue to do what they were supposed to do. This was the use of the power of the rules. It was a silent and invisible change. It was so detailed that no one could sense it. In a light screen, the 7 magic arrays rotated loudly. The surging energy turned into a sea of light that extended for thousands of feet. It was so bright that it looked like a spot of light. Even if one stood in the starry sky and looked down, they could see the splendid burning scene. 7 pillars of light shot out from the magic arrays and directly penetrated the firmament, projecting into the starry sky. Yin Nuashing raised her head. Her eyes had already turned into 7 colors. The white of her eyes was like an ocean's wave. Her vision passed through the obstruction of space and saw the few planets. The huge pillars of light were like beacons that pierced the surface of the planets. Myriad planets, heed my command. In the name of the dark string moon of the celestial god of chaos. Yin Nuashing and Zero shouted in unison. Their auras suddenly changed. Their palms remained pressed against the void, but it felt like their hands were directly in control of the entire void. It was as if the world was operating in their hands. Everything had to operate according to their orders. The movement of the planets, the burning of the sun, the changes in space, every little bit was controlled by the two of them. At this moment, they were truly like gods. This was the power of celestial gods. It was a great power that only belonged to that level. Ming looked at this scene in shock. Following Yin Nuashing and Zero's orders, the entire starry sky suddenly trembled. A very strange feeling was born from the bottom of her heart. In her senses, this starry sky was filled with a power that she felt extremely close to. It was as if Yin Nuashing's power had directly controlled the entire starry sky. This seemed too, hey, idiot number 1. It's just moving a planet. Do you need to exert all your strength to control the entire starry sky? Zero's voice sounded faintly. Yin Nuashing, shut up. Everyone was speechless. So they had used too much strength? The changes in the starry sky did not last long. The planets marked by the 7 huge light pillars slowly moved under everyone's gaze. They were only responsible for controlling the output of energy. The starry sky spirit and the crimson moon were controlling their own positions. The distance between them had always been constant. It had never changed, and there was no need for it to change now. At this time, what needed to be changed were the other 5 planets. The things between them were controlled by Yin Nuashing and Zero. No one could clearly feel it. Yin Nuashing's eyes were filled with tangible energy. His spirit and soul power were at their maximum. The starry sky was very clear in his perception. It was as if he was sensing his own body. He could change it however he wanted with just a thought. The feeling of being in control of everything was not very good. A large amount of chaotic information poured into his mind, making him a little dizzy. Zero's situation was similar. Countless information crashed into his mind, making him a little distressed. He blamed himself for not telling idiot number one that did not need to go through so much trouble. In the end, he used all his strength before he could say anything. The two of them sighed in unison and hurriedly threw away these chaotic thoughts. They found the positions of the 5 planets and compared them with the previous coordinates. They took a deep breath and moved gently. The thought was as simple as picking up a ball and putting it in another position. In reality, everyone saw the 5 planets suddenly flash and change their positions in an instant. It was as if the entire planet had teleported to another position. Lin Sheng stared blankly as the galaxy changed its position. He was stunned for a long time before he let out a long sigh. He quickly spoke to Yin Nuoxing through his soul. Ahem. This is Highlight, codenamed Highlight. The 2 planets that we are responsible for have been confirmed. We can see a light beam from the center of the planet to the Xingyuan continent. Brother Yin, have you received it? The first-generation team of the 9 Gods Temple is in position. The formation is working well. There are no problems after the planets have changed positions. There are no problems with the 2 planets here. We can already see 2 light beams. Brother Xiao Xing, it's best if you take a look at the last planet. Jun Luoyi and the others feel that the position over there is off. Shui Ling said softly through his soul. This is the mystery dragon. Mr. Yin, the coordinates are not correct. Move it slightly away from the sun. Just as Jun Luoyi's voice rang out, she felt the planet beneath her tremble. Then it moved outwards. Suddenly, a blue light beam shot out from the center of the planet and headed straight for the Xingyuan continent. When she saw it, she hurriedly said, all right. The light beam has set off. You can stop adjusting it. The mystery dragon has been confirmed. It is not heading towards the sun. The nearest planet is ready. Everyone said, why don't you say something? Ming looked at Yin Nuoxing, whose colorful hair was standing on end and whose head was still steaming. He hurriedly fanned her with his wings to cool her head down. At the same time, he said through his soul, Brother's head is burning. It's not convenient for him to speak. Just bear with it. The situation over at the Crimson Moon is normal. 7 light beams have been confirmed. Everyone was speechless. Moments later, Ming shifted the light screen to observe the other 6 locations. The light pillars that shot out from the planets landed on the Xingyuan continent invisibly, like connecting marks. The light pillars of the Crimson Moon were red, just like what Lin Sheng had seen the other day. They all came from the center of the planets and connected to the Xingyuan continent. It was as if they were reenacting the scene of the 7 planets being connected tens of millions of years ago. The positions are connected. It is stable. The passage has been opened, young god. Chapter 864. The next day, early in the morning, on the Xingyuan continent, Yin Nuoxing and the others got up from the main room in the Green Pine Village. Although they said it was the next day, they had only slept for about 4 hours. Yin Nuoxing, who was used to operating the Thousand Dreams Sutra to prevent herself from sleeping, did not sleep at all. A few hours ago, it only took a few minutes to shift the position of the stars. It was a simple matter. It was equivalent to directly changing the coordinates of the planets and moving them to the desired position. Then it was done. However, Yin Nuoxing's mistake allowed him to control the entire galaxy. In that state, it was only a matter of thought for him to make the sun explode. After that, Zero explained the mistake to everyone. Everyone ridiculed Yin Nuoxing for using a sword to cut pork, and the pork was rotten. Lin Sheng, Yao Hua, and the others had already gathered at the center of the Xingyuan continent's life circle. The 2 groups rested there last night. Yin Nuoxing felt that since they were already here, they should not leave. It was inexplicable. No matter what, they should at least say hello. So, She insisted on staying in the Green Pine Village and waited for dawn. Everyone said, "You were the one who left just like that, weren't you?" Yin Nuashing took a deep breath and covered her ears. "I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it." Hearing the noise downstairs, Yin Nuashing moved her body and put the half-asleep little purple soul on her shoulder. The little girl subconsciously hugged his head tightly. Then, she shook Ming, who was drooling from his sleep, and Little Moon and Yu-Er, who had sneaked in the middle of the night. The group walked downstairs, ready to go. Luo was still wearing the coarse linen clothes. Maybe he drank too much last night. When he woke up this morning, he was still a little tipsy. He was punching the sun with 2 points of strength. When he saw the group of people from Yin Nuashing coming down neatly, he grinned and showed his 8 shining big teeth. "Awake. How did you sleep last night?" Yin Nuashing replied with a smile. She looked at Zero and said, "We'll be leaving today. We disturbed you for quite some time." Law was a little stunned, then grinned and nodded. He did not say anything to stop them. He knew that Yin Nuashing and the others were adventurers. It was impossible for them to stay in one place all the time. They got along very well these days, but he could not help but sigh. But after seeing Yin Nuashing and the others, he did not sigh. After thinking for a while, he invited them to have breakfast and lunch together as a farewell. Yin Nuashing and the others did not delay. After eating, they packed up and took some dry food from Law. They did not disturb the other people in Green Pine Village. Maybe they would look up tonight and find that the position of the 6 moons had changed. Maybe they would be a little surprised, but it would not affect anything. Everyone was still calculating their daily necessities. The weak peace here should really last forever. The consciousness of the starry sky spirit and the red moon also slowly recovered from their weak state. Their arrival was just a fleeting moment, and it would not cause any changes in other people's lives. Oh, when the meteor fell, it seemed to have inadvertently changed the fate of hundreds of people, but who knows? Yin Nuashing said that she did not want to think too much about this complicated problem. At this time, she was just focused on teleporting and teleporting. In less than 10 minutes, they arrived at the rendezvous point. They had not seen each other for 3 days. Even when they set up the formation to move a few planets, Yin Nuashing and Ling only hurriedly moved people here and there and left the formation map. They did not even stop for a minute. Now, they finally met up with each other. They had spent 3 days on the Xingyuan continent. It seemed to be quite comfortable. Yao Hua and the others had even changed their clothes into the clothes of the Xingyuan continent. They were quite luxurious, and it was very convenient for them to fight. However, compared to the tailor-made battle suits they had, their clothes were obviously not as advanced. This is it. A door-like object appeared in front of him. It was constructed from 4 stone pillars that were engraved with runes and a stone slab at the top. The 4 corners of the stone slab were slightly curved upwards, forming a wave. The stone pillars were about 3 feet tall. Besides the runes that were engraved all over the pillars, there was nothing special about them. At the center of the 4 pillars was a black vortex. There was a strange smell coming from it, as well as the smell of the void. Obviously, the place this space door led to should be the void. Puff! While Yin Nuashing and the others were sizing up the strange teleportation gate, 2 people jumped out of the black vortex. They were 2 very blurry figures, with only the shape of their bodies and no facial features. One of them was wearing a white robe and holding a golden scepter, while the other was obviously a woman from the shape of her body. She also had no facial features, but she had a head of long hair. Yin Nuashing was startled as soon as the 2 faceless creatures appeared. What they said next shocked Yin Nuashing even more. "Young god, I'm sorry. The container you call the fragment may have fallen from the void a long time ago. I don't know which world it went to." "Oh, it's you." Hearing this special address, Yin Nuashing remembered who they were. The one holding the golden scepter was the spirit of the starry sky. The other one should be the consciousness of the scarlet moon. After a while, he realized that it was not the time to think about it. What? What did you say? That thing floated again?" The chaotic energy in the vessel of the divine artifact is very strong. There is no way for the energy to spread in the void. It would not produce that kind of chaotic black energy. Logically speaking, that should be the case. Maybe the divine artifact, or maybe the chaotic energy was too strong and disturbed the void. The divine artifact floated along with the waves of the void and finally left the range that we can see. I'm sorry. The consciousness of the woman, the Scarlet Moon, said softly. She bowed slightly to Yin Nuashing and the others. You don't have to apologize. It just floated away again. Yin Nuashing let out a long sigh of relief and scratched his head in distress. This is really troublesome. The void is fatal to most people, but won't affect you too much. It's just that it will be a little troublesome to find it. Our range of detection is limited, and we don't know where the divine artifact floated to, the Starry Sky said. When they thought that Yin Nuashing and the others were Protoss, they subconsciously thought that the fragment they were looking for was a divine artifact. So, they even changed their title. It has to be said that these titles could be put together from a different perspective. The void also had its own fluctuations. To put it in a more vivid way, the void was an ocean with its own currents, but everything in the void would become blurry. The void was the existence of nothingness, but it did not mean that there would be nothing all of a sudden. In the deeper layers of the void, if there was really nothing within a certain range, no world, no living creatures, and not even the slightest fluctuation of energy, then that area of the void would have nothing. It would be a nothingness, where there was no concept of space and time, and no rules. It would be a completely disordered place. Of course, in that case, when the void was shattered, one could still see the ocean of time lurking behind the void, that brilliant golden ocean of time. If it was in the shallow layers of the void, such as a world floating in the void, the world would use its world barrier to isolate the influence of the void on itself. This barrier would in turn affect the void, making it no longer an area of nothingness. In the affected void area, the concepts of space and time would be relatively blurry, and the order and rules would be weakened. These four concepts would become more and more blurry the further away they were from the affected void area, until it finally transitioned to the real nothingness, where everything was nothingness. Nothing existed, and there was no concept of space, size, position, time, or length of time. These were all meaningless. The existences that could affect the void were all-powerful conceptual existences. The easiest one to understand was the world barrier that covered the entire world. It needed to protect its own world from being swallowed by the void. Therefore, it could also affect the void in turn. Another example was Yin Nuashing's group came from the top world of the Eight Elements realm. Their conceptual strength was very powerful. Although they couldn't wander freely in the void of the Eight Elements realm, the void order of the Five Elements realm was much weaker than that of the Eight Elements realm. They could also become existences that could affect the void. The range of their influence was similar to a halo or a realm. When they came, they would be affected. When they left, the void would return to normal. In short, Yin Nua planet and the others were not afraid of the void of the five elemental realms. However, in the void of the eight elemental realms, they had to have a certain level of strength to support the barrier. Of course, this was the case in the deeper layers of the void. Those who were still within the range of the world barrier would be relatively less affected by the void. The world barrier doesn't directly isolate the void. It just blocks the interference of the void outside. However, there's also the void inside the world barrier. The void that we see when we break through space is the void inside the world barrier. You can imagine that the world barrier is divided into two areas. The inner area is calmer, while the outer area is more chaotic. When the group of young gods were sent on their way by the two planet consciousnesses, Yin Nuashing and Zero acted as encyclopedias and tried their best to explain the relationship between the void and the world barrier in their souls. The difference between animals raised in captivity and wild animals. Nightmare hit the nail on the head with one sentence. Zero and Yin Nuashing's eyes widened. You're F***king accurate. But what's with this unpleasant feeling? The voids inside the world barrier are all raised in captivity. They're docile. Outside the world barrier, some of them occasionally jump out, so some of them are relatively docile. Gradually, The voids in the wild area become very wild. Yuanqi explained with his arms crossed. Yin Nuoxing and Zero looked at each other and rolled up their sleeves. Yuanqi and Nightmare turned pale with fright. Calm down. Calm down. Impulse is the devil. We saw that you were having a hard time explaining, and we're afraid that Yin Nuoxing and her group of idiots couldn't understand. Yin Nuoxing and Zero immediately felt relieved. Everyone's eyes suddenly became bitter. Hurrying through the void was very fast. Taking advantage of the blurriness effect, it didn't take much time to rush from the center of the world to the world barrier at the edge of the world. Therefore, after 10 minutes, the Star Spirit and the Crimson Moon stopped. Everyone also stopped and looked forward. What appeared in front of them was a transparent membrane as thin as an egg membrane. It looked like it would break with a poke, but this membrane had blocked countless people who wanted to break through the void and cross planes. At least 99% of those who wanted to cross planes were blocked by this seemingly fragile world barrier and could only cultivate peacefully. Even those who were hot-headed enough to break through the world barrier and jump out were lucky enough to break through the world barrier of another world. That was why they were able to directly cross the void between worlds and directly step into another world. They didn't just jump into the void and die. At the mention of this, Yin Nuoxing and Zero couldn't help but chuckle. Crossing worlds should be their limit. Want to cross the primordial realm? Humph! It's basically unrealistic if you don't have a luck to be enlightened by tens of millions of years of cultivation just by drinking water. The thickness of the primordial realm's barrier is the same. In the 8 primordial realms, the gods have to control the power of the primordial realm, which is equivalent to holding a special key to open the primordial realm's barrier. How can the people of the lower realm have the power to break the primordial realm's barrier by force? To break the primordial realm's barrier with pure strength, one must at least have the power of the later divine rank. In other situations, they rely on the power of the primordial realm to pass through. Our group is no exception. What's the divine rank? Yao Hua raised his hand excitedly, wanting to hear the information about the later divine rank. Usually, the adult in his family would not tell him these things with the excuse of it's not the right time. Today, when they heard that there seemed to be a sign, they hurriedly asked. Everyone pricked up their ears, obviously wanting to know this tempting and frightening answer. Yin Nuoxing and Zero looked at each other, shrugged, and said casually, later divine rank. Divine rank is the 4th major realm of the later divine rank. The 5th major realm is the heavenly god. Those before the heavenly god are called gods. I'll tell you this for now. Damn, you're killing me with OCD. Everyone was so angry that they wanted to raise their middle fingers. Don't ask. You haven't even reached the initial divine rank yet, and you still want to know about the later divine rank? Zero couldn't help but laugh, instantly dispelling 80% of everyone's enthusiasm. These words were too hurtful. I'll ask one more time. Just one. Just one will do, okay? Chu Yingxian grabbed Yin Nuoxing's sleeve and blinked her big eyes. Yin Nuoxing looked at her and rolled her eyes. This girl was usually crazy, but now she wanted to act cute? Yin Nuoxing, who had seen through her true nature, didn't fall for this trick. Tisk. Seeing that Yin Nuoxing was indifferent, Chu Yingxian also gave up on acting cute. She smacked her lips and said, if you don't say anything, I'll take it as a yes. Just tell me, how many major realms are there in the later divine rank? Don't overdo it. Don't ask anymore. Knowing won't do you any good. At most, it'll just satisfy your curiosity. Zero said very seriously. Everyone looked at the 2 people who were the only ones who knew but didn't say anything. They wanted to roll up their sleeves, but after weighing the strength of a group of people against 2 big perverts, everyone gave up the idea of attacking together because they couldn't beat them. The group's conversation didn't last long. The conversation in the soul was very fast, perhaps only a matter of 10 seconds. The spirit of the Star Elves and Scarlet Moon didn't know what the group behind them was thinking. They were standing at the edge of the world barrier at this time, pressing one hand on the barrier. Then, the 2 of them silently chanted, and the layer of egg membrane suddenly caved in, revealing the void outside the world barrier in front of everyone. After opening the world barrier, the Crimson Moon turned around and looked at Yin Nuashing and the others. Nodding, she said, "Young gods, this is as far as we can go. Behind us is the domain of the void. The two of us will easily get lost if we go out. The clues are in the void. It is clear at a glance. It will lead you to the place where the divine artifact is." "Well, that's enough. Leave the rest to us. You could go back and have a good rest." Zero smiled and nodded. "Then, I wish you all the best in martial arts, young gods." The spirit of the star elf's voice slowly came out. In the voice, there seemed to be a little bit of a smile, but it disappeared in a flash, making everyone think that it was an illusion. Yin Nuashing and Ling waved their hands and looked at the black hole in the void. They exchanged glances with the others and plunged into it. Behind them, a large group of people also plunged into the black hole and arrived at the domain of the void. As everyone disappeared, the spirit of the Star Elves and Scarlet Moon looked at each other and wiped their hands. The layer of sunken egg membrane was restored to its original state. The two of them stood in the same place for a moment and bowed slightly in the direction where everyone disappeared. Chapter 865. The void was pitch black, with a faint purple hue surrounding the blackness, adding some other colors to the empty scene. However, it was meaningless. The void had no form of color. The void was the void. It was not black, but the void. It could also be said that the void itself was zero, because there was nothing and nothing could be recognized. It appeared black. It was the color that was given to it by people. In the void, huge lumps of light floated. The barrier that looked like an egg membrane glowed faintly in the darkness. The surface of the world barrier glowed with a frequency of light, revealing its existence in the completely dark and silent void. In the pitch-black space, there was a sudden fluctuation. A huge golden barrier expanded in the void. After expanding to about 1,000 feet in size, it slowly stopped. The bright golden light faded from the surface of the barrier, turning into a thin layer of transparent golden energy shield. Inside the shield, there was a large group of people. They were shaking their heads, swaying left and right. Those who were not dizzy quickly looked at their surroundings and increased their power to hold up the golden barrier. "Ugh, so dizzy. Do you feel like this when you pass through the world barrier for the first time?" Chu Yingzhan shook Baby Breath's head. She had one hand on Yun Nuashing's shoulder. Her steps were a little shaky. "Ahem, I've already given you guys a heads up. A slight dizziness is already good enough. The moment you pass through the world barrier, you will suffer a weak void impact and the exploitation of the concept of causality. You won't be able to react in time." Yin Nuashing shrugged. His palms stroked the heads of the girls who were leaning on his chest. He then hugged little Purple Soul, who could not sit still on his shoulder and felt that the world was spinning. He held the little girl's waist with one hand so that she would not fall. Zero opened his arms and smiled at the group. "Welcome to the domain of the void. The purplish-black area beneath our feet is the shallow layer of the void. It is the void that is affected by the world barrier. Within this area, there are still life activities. It will spread outwards until the purplish-black becomes black. That is pure void. Only powerful life forms can set foot there. Although we can go there, we won't if there is no need. There is no need for us to go there. Oh, I repeat, welcome to the domain of the void. Here, the world you know will completely collapse before you. There are no rules, no time, no space. Nothingness is the meaning of pure void. I prefer to call the void the lawless land because this place is indeed lawless." Zero laughed. It took a while for everyone to regain their senses. They looked at the pitch-black area with purple waves. When their eyes focused with difficulty, they shook their heads and looked forward. In front of them, other than a large purplish-black area, there was also a group of huge luminous clusters that were emitting a faint light. They were very eye-catching, like the stars in the sky. Each of the luminous clusters was at least 1,000 feet in size. They floated in front of them. Between these luminous clusters, there would occasionally be a blurry light spot that flowed from one cluster to another. It was like a huge net that connected these huge, luminous clusters together. If one were to count them carefully, there were as many luminous clusters as the stars in the sky. There were too many to count. The huge world group, codenamed Haas. The millions of luminous clusters that you see are each a complete world. When enough worlds are gathered together, they will resonate with each other and form a connection. They will be fixed by each other and become a huge world group that floats together in the void. Worlds are not fixed in the void forever. They will drift very, very slowly. They're like lone islands in the sea. When they meet one day, they will form an archipelago. Yun Nuashing pointed at the luminous clusters that were shrinking in size. These are all worlds? Are they small worlds? Jining could not help but ask. Yin Nuashing shook her head and said, "These are all source worlds. They are worlds that were born in the void. Only worlds created by humans can be called small worlds. When a small world evolves to the extreme, life, planets, stars, and even the entire starry sky will appear. It is only at this stage that a small world transforms into a source world." Zero added, "In fact, creating a world is very simple. A drop of energy simulates the birth of the starry sky. With a loud bang, a world is born. Then it takes tens of millions of years or even hundreds of millions of years to change the flow of energy in the world until it finally creates life. I won't go into the details. Even the king of hell can do it easily. But a small world is different. Guess what's the difference?" After saying that, Zero and Yun Nuashing both revealed the same evil smile, sizing up the crowd with great interest. Everyone looked at each other and exchanged information in whispers. Their eyes flashed, but after a while, they all shook their heads. This kind of profound question was a little difficult for them. Ming's golden mouth flashed slightly. She thought of the small world she was in, and then she thought of what Yin Nuashing said just now. She felt that she had an answer, and said subconsciously, "The order of a small world evolving into a source world is reversed." "Oh!" Zero and Yin Nuashing looked at her with surprise, but they did not say anything. Instead, they said, "Continue." Ming's mouth flapped her fan and nodded. "Creation starts with a drop of energy as the starting point. It gives birth to the starry sky, stars, planets, and life. The beginning of a small world is only a medium-sized place. It slowly develops and creates the environment and life. Well, the starry sky only appeared later." After Ming said that, she looked at Yin Nuashing nervously. This was just her guess from a few words, and she did not know if it was right. Yin Nuashing and Zero looked at each other and laughed. The former walked forward and reached out to rub Ming's silver-white hair. She smiled gently and said, "Not bad, little girl. You can even say this." Everyone was stunned. How could this work? What was the difference in the order of creation if it was reversed? Of course it's different, and it's very different. Yin Nuashing saw the puzzled look on everyone's face and knew what they were thinking. She smiled and said, "The birth of a source world starts with a drop of energy. With an explosion, all matter is transferred into a rapidly expanding space. In this space, order and rules are born. These two concepts are in charge of this expanding new space." Zero said, "And the birth of a small world requires the use of one's own rules and energy to maintain this new incomplete world. There is no real sun or real starry sky in it. Only the energy you input maintains that false world, and the use of your own power of rules to develop order to fill in the gaps. There are loopholes in all of this, and the loophole is that the power of rules you control is incomplete. To be more specific, if the small world lacks the normal flow of time, then look for the normal flow of time in the original world. If a piece of space suddenly disappears, then it might be due to the uncoordinated operation of the power of space-time, the power of the world, and the power of the primordial realm. These are all the power of the origin. Understanding and controlling them is the cultivation method of the gods. Creating a small world allows one to fully understand them. If the order of time is missing, then look for the power of time. To be specific, if the small world lacks the normal flow of time, Then look for the normal flow of time in the original world. If a piece of space suddenly disappears, then it might be due to the uncoordinated operation of the power of space. Then figure out how the space of the original world operates, and explore and comprehend these. This is the purpose of the gods when creating a small world, to understand a small world that grows bit by bit from their own hands. Yin Nuashing and Zero joined forces to preach at the side. Then, the two of them stared at Yuan Shi and Nightmare in unison. Both of you, can you summarize? The two of them trembled and laughed dryly. Yuan Shi coughed softly, indicating that he had something to say. Everyone quickly turned their attention to him. Then they saw him pondering for a while. Then he said, on the difference between a newborn baby and a baby reincarnated by a god. When you teach him, you have to ask the auntie next door how to raise a child. He's a reincarnated god, so he knows everything when he's born. He doesn't cry or make a fuss. By the age of 6, he could do whatever he wants. By the age of 1, he can fight with others. By the age of 10, he can save the world. You just have to let him be. Nightmare crossed his arms and nodded repeatedly. Yin Nuashing and Zero took a deep breath and slapped their heads. That works too. Seeing the two of them squatting at the side with a broken face, everyone was speechless. They did not know why, but after hearing Yuan Shi and Nightmare's broken version of the general explanation, the creation of the world, which was once a very sacred thing in their eyes, suddenly became very ordinary. It even made them feel like they were teaching a naughty child. Why was that him? Back to the topic. We went too far. Yin Nuashing put away his gloomy face and stood up. He looked at the purple-black void and said, let's stop talking about this. Let's get down to business. Everyone looked at the two of them, speechless. It seemed like they were the ones who started this topic. I found the direction. Zero stretched out his hand and pointed forward. He waved his hand and took the lead to fly forward with the golden energy barrier. Everyone quickly followed. There is no order or law in the void. These purple-black places are the shallow layers of the void. The order and law are slightly blurred. Holding up an ordinary energy barrier and moving forward, it is easy to lose the direction and coordinates in space and go in the wrong direction. As Zero spoke, he pointed at the golden barrier in front of him and said, but if there's a rule domain, it will be different. It can create a rule domain within a certain range. It is also effective in the pure void. After giving the place a rule domain, one can move forward normally and move through space. Although it is called a rule domain, it does not mean that one has to master the power of rule. It is very simple. As soon as Zero finished speaking, a thought was sent out. Everyone felt an additional message in their minds. They quickly checked it. After a while, they finished reading it. Then, the corner of their eyes twitched slightly. This method was so simple that it made people's hair stand on end. The so-called rule domain focused on the word domain. Using one's own power to form an enclosed field and covering every inch of space with one's mind. It was a method of deceiving the void to obtain a safe rule domain. It was simple and effective. TSK. Each of the balls of light is a world. How many worlds are there? How many worlds does this Haas world group have? Yaohua could not help but smack his lips. It shouldn't be this small, right? The Book of the Epics did not manage to find a full picture of this world group. There are at least 1 billion worlds in this group. Although these balls of light are small, each of them is a complete world. It is very easy for us to pass through the world barrier. The world barrier is very sturdy, but we do not need to break it. We only need to let our rule domain touch the aura of the target world's world barrier, and we will be able to enter that world. Oh, by the way, even if we look far away, as long as we remember that aura and imitate that energy pattern, we'll be able to enter that world no matter how far away we are. As we said before, in the void, space, distance, and so on are meaningless. Every world has their own way of identifying them. The aura of the world barrier is one of them. The other is the void's coordinates, which is a little more complicated, Zero said. Have you found the target world? Where is it? Chu Yingjian asked. Very soon. It is not far from where we are now. The power of the fragment is very special. It directly pierced through the world barrier and fell into the world. Fortunately, the world barrier repaired itself quickly. The fragment is not big. If it was something else, the world without the protection of the world barrier would be swallowed by the power of the void and disappear completely. Everything inside would be gone. Yin Nuoxing said as she pointed ahead. Is it the end of the world? Nightmare's face twitched. Yin Nuoxing and Zero nodded. Those who do not have the power to jump out of the world barrier and stop in the void will all die in the disaster of the void's backflow. If the dumpling skin breaks, the meat filling will be finished, Yuan, she said thoughtfully. What level of accuracy is that? Everyone was shocked. Yin Nuoxing asked, Are you hungry? Yuan Shi rubbed his stomach and nodded. I think so. Everyone was speechless. Everyone followed the golden world barrier and wandered slowly in the void. Standing on the world barrier, they could see small things happening in the world as if they were looking at a miniature world in a glass ball. As for Nightmare, who said the world inside the dumpling, he had already been beaten up by Yin Nuoxing and Zero. Yuan Shi sighed at the side. He had to be careful with his complaints. The two big bosses were leading the way. If he said too much, he would be beaten up. After flying for a while, they suddenly felt a strange feeling spread through their bodies, causing them to tremble. They did not stop and looked at each other, not knowing what had happened. We've crossed planes. The world we just came out of was at the level of the lower plane, and we're now at the level of the intermediate plane. It seems that Haas is a world group that crosses planes. It's at the border between two planes. Do you feel comfortable all over? The energy is much denser. Zero smiled. Everyone nodded. The energy in the void was the power of the void. For people like them who came from the Eight Elements realm, their sensitivity to energy had reached an astonishing level. A relatively large leap would cause a reaction in their bodies, even if the energy concentration here was very thin for them. We're here. Zero stopped in front of a light sphere that was thousands of feet in size. He carefully sensed for a while and said, The tracking energy stopped here. The fragment should have crashed into this world. No. Yin Nuoxing shook her head and frowned slightly. She could not help but pinch the hand that was holding Ming and Little Moon. The fragment did crash into this world, but it instantly broke through the world barrier of this world and went through the other side. The irreparable damage caused the void to flow backwards. This world has been eroded by the void. It's struggling at death's door. It won't be long before it breaks away from the Haas world group and vanishes into the void. The countless lives inside, none of them will survive. Everyone's expression froze. Just as they were about to say something, the light sphere in front of them that was connected to the other worlds suddenly trembled. The weak light that was connected to the other worlds suddenly broke. The blurry light spots disappeared, and the world light sphere turned purple-black under everyone's nervous gaze. Like a purple-black glass bead, it broke away from the connection to the other worlds and slowly drifted into the deep void. The process of the world's destruction lasted for a long time, and they were just in time for the final scene. They could watch as the world floated into the deep void and was swallowed by the endless void. The countless life forms inside didn't even realize that their world had been destroyed, and they died without knowing what had happened. Life is so fragile that it can't even produce a spark. All worlds are just a drop in the ocean in the void. What's more, the lives inside are so fragile, cheap, and meaningless. Yuan Shi sighed. Yin Nuoxing was silent. After a while, she waved her hand. The hole in front of them had been connected by the neighboring worlds, forming a huge three-dimensional net. The destruction of that world did not cause any waves. It did not even touch its neighbors. Let's go. There's no need to lament about this. There are new worlds every day, and worlds are destroyed every day. It's just like how people grow old, get sick, and die. It's the same for the worlds. Zero tried hard to dispel everyone's melancholy. After the river of time stood in the void, it never stopped. It can't stop. Once it stops, all the worlds that lack the concept of time will collapse. Yin Nuoxing stood with her hands behind her back and sighed. We can't stop either. We can't stop. The only thing we can do is to move forward. We can explore the front of our lives and add meaning to our birth. Everyone sighed and nodded. They followed Yin Nuashing and continued to drift in the void. After the fragment indirectly destroyed a world, it continued to drift towards the center of the Haas world group. Yin Nuashing and the others circled around in the void. The remnant energy of the fragment lingered in the void for a long time without dissipating. It was still very clear. It was the power of the 8 elemental realm. The void of the 5 elemental realms could not handle this power, so it could only float there. This also saved Yin Nuashing and the others a lot of unnecessary trouble. They followed the energy trail all the way to the end. They didn't know how much time had passed in the void, where the concept of time was blurred. Everyone gradually became tired. It didn't feel good to stand in the void for a long time. The chaos here could even penetrate the law domain and affect them. However, it didn't affect them much. At most, they would exhaust some of their energy. After all, they were beings of the 8 elemental realm. Even if they plunged into pure void without any protection, they could still last for a long time. Yin Nuashing took out the Book of Epics and checked the time. She sighed. We crossed over from the 8 elemental realm to here. Relatively speaking, it has been 15 years since we crossed over. It seems like it's because of the influence of the void and the void. Oh, I made a mistake. The chaotic time has been reset. Due to the influence of the void and the void, no matter how long we struggle here, there won't be a huge time difference between us and the origin world of the 8 elemental realm. The so-called 15 years is an error caused by the time we wandered around in the void. It doesn't mean that 15 years have passed. In fact, it has only been 3 days since we slipped out of the world barrier. If we slip back now, only 3 or 4 days have passed in the deity world. Everyone was shocked. After listening to the explanation, they heaved a sigh of relief. They were scared to death. They thought that 15 years had passed without them noticing, but it turned out that it had only been 3 days. Adding the time they spent in the Star Origin world, it should have been 7 days. However, the concept of time would be different in the same world due to the large distance between them. They didn't know how far they had traveled in the void, so the concept of time would be even further apart. However, as they returned to the origin world, everything would be corrected. Time wouldn't leave too many traces on them. After all, 15 years was just an imaginary number. It was meaningless. According to their biological clocks, only 7 days had passed in their lives. If it was calculated according to 24 hours, we've left Haas very far. I feel that we're about to cross over to the upper plane, Zero said. Not long ago, a tremor brought us to the upper plane. We're close to the gathering point of the void of the 5 elemental realms. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes at him. Is that so? Zero scratched his head. It seems that holding up the world barrier is a little tiring. What? We've crossed over to another plane? Yuan Shi, who was slow to react, took a while to react. The void is so small? As I said, the concept of size in the void doesn't have much meaning. We've always had the idea of flying forward and following the trajectory forward, or rather the will, which allows us to move quickly in concept. In fact, we're just following the trajectory of the energy. We'll go wherever it is, even in the void of the 5 elemental realms. If we don't have the idea of crossing over to another plane, we'll stay in this plane for a very long time. The number of worlds in this plane is beyond your imagination, and you'll never be able to fly out until you want to leave, Yin Nuashing said. Oh, the good news is that we've arrived. It's right in front of us. Yin Nuashing was stunned. Her soft voice lifted everyone's spirits. We've arrived? In this dark place, there were only light balls and light balls. Although it was very shocking, it was also very boring. There was no other scenery to see. They simply flew and flew. They didn't even know whether they were flying forward or not. They had to use their eyes to make sure. At the same time, they had to keep the idea of flying forward in their minds. Only then would their bodies move. This process was boring and tiring. At this moment, everyone wished they could find a world barrier to hide in and leave the void to take a break. Huh? As soon as Yin Nuashing's voice fell, Zero clearly felt that his body was accelerating. Not only him, but but everyone else also felt that something was wrong. When they looked up, they saw a huge light ball flying towards them. They had bumped into it themselves. "We've been sucked over. I'm afraid we'll hit it. What will happen if we hit the world barrier? What will happen if the meat stuffing hits the dumpling skin? At most. Ouch. Ah. Yahua. You're asking for trouble. Let's not talk about this anymore. Hurry up and prepare to resist the impact. It should be fine." Everyone was talking at once. They seemed to be a little flustered, but when they saw that Yin Nuashing and Zero weren't flustered, they didn't feel nervous. They were just joking around to ease their emotions. After all, the void was really too stuffy. Everyone only had time to say one sentence. Before they could finish their sentence, the world collided with them. Everyone quickly reinforced the strength of their nomological domains. Then, they could only watch as the huge ball of light rapidly approached them. Chapter 866. The original intention of the rule domain was to isolate the space one was in from the outside world. It was mostly used in the void to resist the power of the void that could erase everything, but it couldn't achieve complete isolation. However, maintaining 95% isolation was already very efficient. After all, no one was interested in staying in the void for a long time. If such a high degree of isolation was dissolved by the void, no one could be blamed for it. Who asked you to be in a daze in the void out of boredom? Other than blocking the influence of the void, it also affected the normal space. After all, the rule domain they set up wasn't as comprehensive as the rules of the world itself. It was only an emergency measure. It wasn't good to be in such a state for a long time. Everyone knew this, so when they crashed into the world barrier, they all removed the rule domain and replaced it with an ordinary energy barrier to resist the vacuum of the starry sky. Then a tragedy happened. Everyone was pulled into this world by a suction force. The moment they entered, they subconsciously replaced the barrier. Before they could do anything else, they felt a terrifying suction force that made the world spin. Their vision was pulled into blurry lines that moved horizontally, vertically, and diagonally. Their eyes couldn't distinguish what those messy colors were. Because of this, there were ghostly cries in their souls, showing that they were being pulled into a daze by an unknown force. And, Atyin? What happened? I can't remember what I'm remembering. Little star, think of a way. I can't stop. Yinat, come on, at Yin%. At this moment, Yin Nuashing also felt that the world was spinning, but he had some experience. This kind of watching the world fly and spin around, all kinds of blue and red scenes, and the sky turning upside down as if space and time had collapsed. They were many times faster than the speed of light, and during this process, his entire body was like a spinning top that was constantly being whipped, spinning up and down left and right. He could not even hold the few girls in his arms. My bile is coming out from the spinning. Oh, I'll swallow it back. It was unknown who roared this sentence, but everyone's faces darkened. However, in their blurred vision, they didn't know who to look for to settle the score with, so they could only hold back their anger. The book of the epic. Zero's voice in the soul dragged on for a long time before he blurted out, "What pulled us over? There's no need to struggle. Both of us are at least 10 million times the speed of light. Protect our bodies." Yin Nuashing could not bear to listen any longer. "We're moving at superluminal speed now, and we're doing a long-distance space jump. There's no need to struggle. I can't even move, so use all your strength to protect yourself. Don't get smashed into pieces after crashing into something. With our physique, we can't withstand collisions at tens of millions of times the speed of light without any defense. Do you believe that even God and underworld experts can be knocked into half paralyzed?" Everyone held back their disgust. "Troublesome. Speak slowly." After going through backflips, front flips, side flips, twirling countless degrees, or simply somersaulting for an unknown period of time, everyone's vision suddenly became clear for a moment, causing everyone's body to stop moving at this moment. Only their eyeballs could move. When it stopped, everyone hurriedly turned their gazes and stared down or up. Some people were still upside down or stuffing their heads into their pants. Then, Everyone saw an incomparably huge planet appear in front of them. When they saw the appearance of this planet, they couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air in their souls. It was a black planet. Perhaps its original appearance was not as black as it was now. Floating on its surface was a thick and dense layer of black clouds. They were currently above the planet, far away from the atmosphere, but they could already feel the chaotic and destructive power coming from the black clouds. The wriggling black clouds made everyone uneasy. Almost as soon as they saw it, they thought of something. Could this be the it that Xingyuan continent mentioned? Yuanqi tried to move, but could not. He rolled his eyes and hurriedly asked in his soul, "By the way, why did we stop? And why did we stop in such a strange posture?" "Oh, I used the Book of Epics to release a forceful time pause. From the perspective of the laws, the space around us is paused for 1,000 feet, but the suction force is still there. When I release it later, we'll still fly out." After stopping, Zero's voice was clearly much more normal. Hearing the last sentence, everyone's face darkened. "Then why do we stop? Look at the destination clearly." Yinwashing blinked and said, "By the way, be mentally prepared. We will crash into that continent in 0000. Ignore 30,001 seconds, and we will pass through that layer of black mist. You want to see how you die, right?" Nightmare sounded surprised. Everyone's face darkened, then suddenly turned pale. A moment later, their faces flushed red. Their faces looked like they were dyed in a colorful dye house. Yin Nuashing and Zero, more or less. Crash. Then don't stop. What's the meaning of making you turn around to look at the machete when the guillotine is halfway down? The crowd cursed. It's better to get the pain over with than to prolong the pain. That's true. Zero nodded. Then I'll release it. 3, 2, 1, wait. Everyone turned pale with fright. Before he could finish speaking, the group of people vanished from where they were with a whoosh. At the same time, a dazzling mushroom cloud erupted from the ground below. Multicolored shockwaves of energy dyed the mushroom cloud in various colors. The mighty shockwaves of energy blew away the black clouds that covered the sky, blowing them tens of millions of kilometers away, revealing a huge hole. Boom! An intense explosion that sounded as if the heavens and earth were collapsing rang out in the next instant. The huge impact swept up a thick layer of earth, sending countless fragments of the earth's crust into the sky. It was as if a massive meteor had crashed into the earth. The fragments were swept up into the sky for several tens of thousands of kilometers, almost flying to the edge of the atmosphere. Then they fell from the sky like small meteors, radiating out in all directions. It was like a majestic meteor shower. Looking down from the starry sky, it was incomparably gorgeous. Below the black clouds was a large group of strange-looking creatures. Their bodies were completely black, and they were 3 to 4 meters tall. They had humanoid upper bodies, but they only had similar lines. At the top of their bodies was a huge head. Except for their mouths and a row of dazzling white teeth, they had no facial organs. The hands that extended from their torsos were like segmented arthropods, and their palms were 5 huge and strange black whip-like objects. As for their lower bodies, they were a pile of surging black clouds and tentacles that looked like octopus tentacles extended from the clouds. These black creatures were like creatures that had failed in their creation and were forcefully combined with other creatures that had failed in their creation. If they were still alive, one could even find a variety of strange biological characteristics on their bodies. They were strange, disgusting, and extremely frightening. They were the kind of disgusting creatures that could scare people into fainting on the spot if they were thrown on the ground. This was a huge plain. 2 mountain ranges that stretched for hundreds of miles stood upright on the ground, towering like a huge natural city wall. In the gap between the 2 mountain ranges, there was a huge city guarding this place. It was also an important line of defense, guarding the pass that led to the rear of the plain. Once this line of defense was lost, there would be a vast plain behind them, and those black and disgusting creatures could no longer be stopped. At this time, the city wall looked very dilapidated. Hundreds of meters inside and outside the city wall, Huge beasts and warriors could be seen everywhere. The seemingly sturdy city wall had long been breached. The black beasts were like a vanguard that wantonly attacked and killed inside and outside the city wall. The line of defense that had been built with countless lives was still very fragile. Those black beasts could often fight against the siege of dozens of experts without being at a disadvantage. Fortunately, they were only the vanguard, and their reinforcements were all blocked on the plain, so they were not breached. As for the fall of the city gate, everyone was already used to it. The city wall had been broken down, repaired, and fallen down thousands of times. It was probably because of luck that this city was still standing here. At the place where the plain and the pass clashed, countless experts held up the sky, forcibly blocking the invasion of the giant black beasts. Among the crowd, there were a few figures emitting dazzling golden light. The energy surging from them was extremely vast. One of them was able to stop an entire group of giant black beasts. However, the densely packed number of giant black beasts still made everyone's scalp numb. The battle line was pushed back and forth. Even with the golden figures boosting everyone's strength and resisting the black beasts, it was inevitable that there would be casualties. However, those who died would be resurrected in the rear after a while, and then they would pick up their weapons and rush forward to fight until the end. It was as if nothing had happened. This battle line stretched out for hundreds of meters with great difficulty. It could only be said that it was barely holding on and did not collapse. As for the ability to counterattack, this line of defense was almost equal to zero. This line of defense was also slowly retreating until a dazzling mushroom cloud suddenly exploded in the sky. Boom! The shockwave of the dazzling energy explosion pushed everyone back in unison. Those few extremely special golden figures were no exception as they retreated by a large distance. Those black beasts were overturned by large swathes on the ground. A moment later, what came was a meteor shower. Those fragments of the Earth's crust that were thrown away fell from the sky, turning into a large number of meteors that fell to the ground, splashing out violent explosions of various sizes. Spirit King above, the reinforcements have arrived? No. When did we call for reinforcements? Protective shield. Activate the protective shield of the stronghold. Everyone, take cover. Being smashed to death in this meteor shower is not a work injury for you to calculate. The vigorous explosion spread across the entire plain. Looking down from the starry sky, it was as if specks of starlight were blooming. Those few golden figures roared in unison, propping up a huge golden energy barrier that was thousands of feet in size, completely covering the battle line. The stronghold behind them also raised a huge energy barrier, followed by the meteor shower that spread to this place. Boom, boom, boom. The heat wave of the falling meteors hit everyone's body, blowing their robes loudly. A lot of meteors fell on the two huge energy barriers, splashing out layers of energy water. The meteors were quickly smashed into pieces and then disappeared. Everyone looked up at the meteor shower that flew further away, their cheeks twitching slightly. Hurry up and inform the Holy Kingdom to set up air defense. Damn it, just set up the protective shield will do. With such a large number of meteors falling, half of Leviathan will be blown into craters. If you don't want to see your home buried under the ruins after the war ends, hurry up and send a message. On the battlefield, a young man who looked like a commander, his whole body covered in golden light, hurriedly shouted. After a moment, he looked up at the place where the mushroom cloud had not dissipated and could not help but take a deep breath. Old man, what happened? The energy interference from the black cloud is too severe. I can't see clearly what happened there. The meteor shower is not lethal to the void beasts, but I don't know what happened. At the center of the explosion, there should be a considerable number of deaths. A majestic middle-aged man with a beard on his mouth and chin who was also covered in golden light looked into the distance and sighed after a moment. Hey, isn't that? Hearing that, the young man could not help but gasp. If a large number of void beasts die at the same time, it should attract a big guy this time. Cynthia, issue the highest mobilization order and ask the rear to send some people. At least 3 high-grade battle spirits should come, otherwise this pass will be broken. The middle-aged man shouted softly, and the silver-haired woman who stood beside him with a golden longbow nodded. She turned and disappeared in a flash, and when she reappeared, she was already in the stronghold behind them. As soon as his voice fell, the other 2 people who stayed in the same place and were covered in golden light were looking at the battlefield. At this time, they were slightly stunned. Frowning, they pointed to the front and said, "The void beasts are retreating." Hearing that, the young man's expression also changed. He quickly looked into the distance and seemed to have noticed something. His voice was solemn as he said, "Damn it, there are people in that explosion. The void beasts are not retreating. They are gathering in that direction. There are people in the explosion?" The middle-aged man muttered and turned his head. "Do you want to go and have a look?" The young man thought for a moment and turned his head to the crowd and shouted, "Close guards, stay within the range of the spirit light barrier. Knights, open your chest to maintain the barrier. Spirit shooters, support from the rear. Don't leave the line of defense for now. Those who are fast, hurry back to the stronghold to support. The few of us will go out for a trip." "Yes, God." Everyone immediately stood at attention. Even the people who were lying on the ground jumped up and clenched their fists together as they shouted in unison. At this time, the silver-haired woman named Exayanya came back. She looked at everyone and fixed her eyes on the man. The man nodded at her and waved his hand. The 5 of them emitted a golden light and turned into streaks of golden light and rushed out. Yinuashing wanted to curse at this moment, but she couldn't find a place to vent her anger. God knows how they accelerated to that level of light speed. This time, a group of people was holding the energy barrier and crashing into the ground. It seemed that when they were in the Xingyuan continent, they also fell from the sky. Then what was this? They kept jumping from the edge of the world's barrier and charged at thousands of times the speed of light. They rushed to this place in 3 minutes and crashed into the ground. This group of people really showed how they fell on the ground upside down. Half of Yao Hua's body was still in the ground. Only his butt and legs were exposed. "Hiss! Hiss! It hurts!" Yin Nuashing grimaced. He kept hitting people with the light element, and one day, he was hit by the ground with the speed of light. Moreover, it was thousands of times the speed of light. He was glad that his group of people survived. At most, they only had a few broken bones or sprained their waists. He couldn't help but sigh when he saw the group of people next to him being blasted into the ground like cannonballs. However, he was still carrying a few girls on top of him. He wasn't much better. His chest was squeezed into the ground. The place where they were forced to land had already been blasted open. It was more than 100 meters deep and looked like a basin. If they hadn't held up the energy barrier and used the power of rules to convert all the momentum into energy to crash into the ground, this planet would have been penetrated. Good heavens, thousands of times the speed of light. It was so fast that they couldn't even stop. Yin Nuashing grimaced and put the girls on top of him down. He got up from the ground in pain. His bones were automatically recovering, so this injury wasn't so bad. After all, he was just thrown to the ground. He was glad that his bones didn't penetrate his body. "Oh, you're still awake. It seems that only the 2 of us are awake. The others have all fainted." A few meters away, Zero slowly turned over and stood up. Yin Nuashing glanced at his legs. His legs were weak, but this guy was still standing so elegantly. "I'm probably suffering from a phobia of light speed for the rest of my life." Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly and moved his almost dislocated arm. He put it back in place and sighed. "What's going on?" That suction force disappeared when we were playing with the meteorite crashing into the ground. "Where is this?" "Planet Leviathan, the center of the void core gathering point of the 5 primordial realms. In the upper plane, the highest level of strength is a half-demon 9th change." "Oh, this is the conversion. The Book of Epochs seems to have been damaged. There's a small problem." Zero tossed the white ball of light in his hand and sighed. "This thing can be damaged?" Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes. Zero shrugged his shoulders. Just as he was about to say something, the ground suddenly rumbled, causing the 2 of them to narrow their eyes. This commotion was akin to thousands of soldiers and horses wildly galloping on the ground. In between, there was pushing, trampling, and other unavoidable things. The noise spread over from the distance. The sound and posture was just like an earthquake. Chaotic energy. Zero sniffed lightly and said, "If I'm not wrong, this should be the energy that we've been chasing. The fragment should be on this planet, but no need for but. I saw it. It's disgusting." Yin Nuoxing's cheeks twitched. As he spoke, a black dot suddenly appeared on the edge of the basin. From a distance, it looked like a water droplet. Since it was a water droplet, it was not just a single droplet. As the black dot appeared, a black river suddenly appeared on the edge of the basin. It rushed over from all directions. It looked as if a hole had been opened on the surface of the sea, and all the seawater was pouring in. It carries that kind of weak energy. There's quite a lot of it. Do you want to do it, or should I? Zero saw the true nature of the water droplets at a glance. His face was still calm, as if the attack of thousands of soldiers was just a bluff. He just looked at Yin Nuoxing and smiled faintly. "You protect them. This kind of trash." Yin Nuoxing smiled evilly. He waved his hand and took out the golden bell. It floated half a meter away from him. One strike is enough. Clang! As soon as Zero walked to the middle of the group, a golden time barrier enveloped them. Yin Nuoxing slapped the giant bell and attacked before the army of void beasts approached. The unparalleled sound of the bell turned into a sound wave that could be seen with the naked eye. It swept out like a huge explosion at a speed that was more than 10 times faster than sound. Wherever the sound wave touched, the ground was overturned. In an instant, it hit the first void beast that had just landed at the bottom of the basin. The latter's body was annihilated in an instant. Not even a particle was left behind as it disappeared into space. The army of tens of millions of void beasts behind it was no exception. Rumble. Surging sound waves swept out. Once again, the large-scale and menacing sound waves caused the 5 people who were emitting golden light to be stunned. At this moment, they were fighting their way through and were drowned by the endless army of void beasts. Seeing the tangible sound wave wall rapidly rushing over, their faces turned pale in an instant. Spirit light barrier, absolute defense. The 5 of them hurriedly shouted. The 5 of them formed a circle and heavily smashed their palms together. With a shout, brilliant golden light rapidly spread under their feet, forming golden runes that enveloped them. The instant the barrier was formed, the sound wave wall also unexpectedly arrived. Buzz! Zhi. A strange sound crazily resounded in the ears of the 5 people. It was like the roar of thunder, like the churning of the sea, but it also seemed like they did not hear anything. The huge sound wave instantly passed through the barrier of the 5 people. What was left was only the aftermath of the sound wave. However, the sound wave and the aftermath that swept over in an instant caused the 5 people to tremble violently. A trace of blood quietly flowed out from their ears that were covered in golden light. The sturdy barrier that was overflowing with golden light also rapidly trembled under the vibration of the high-frequency sound wave. The golden runes under their feet continuously disappeared. When the last rune was about to disappear, the sound wave also spread to its limit. It dissipated into an ordinary sound of a bell and gradually faded. Before it reached the defensive line in front of the fortress, it had already returned to normal. Oh my God! After the sound wave swept over, the barrier also reached its limit and collapsed in an instant. The youth's cheeks slightly trembled as he raised his head. The ground was incomparably flat at a glance. It was so flat that not even a broken stone could be seen. The 3-meter wide circle under their feet was the only place that had been spared. At this moment, it had become an isolated island, and the ground in the vicinity had sunk by a full meter. This kind of power is not inferior to that of a high-level spiritual god. No, it's already comparable to the 5 great spiritual gods. Purely in terms of destructive power. Xianya couldn't help but say as she looked at the ground that was so flat that it could be used as a floor. The youth nodded stiffly and raised his head. Following the annihilation of the void beasts, the black clouds in the sky were also rapidly fading. Then they contracted in the sky above the basin that had appeared at the beginning. They slowly squirmed, and a terrifying aura of energy was brewing and churning within. It seemed as if something was about to be born. Nonsense. This is a great fight, but to annihilate so many void beasts all at once, the general that came out this time, is absolutely no small matter. Exainia, go call for reinforcements. If possible, send a signal for help to the spiritual realm. Let any of the 5 great spiritual gods come. Oh, before the youth finished speaking, he saw a huge golden pillar of light soar into the sky from below the basin with a terrifying energy. The power to annihilate time directly dissipated the black fog that was brewing. The sky suddenly cleared up, and there wasn't a single cloud in the blue sky. The 5 people were immediately dumbfounded. It ended before it even started. Chapter 867. I think the biggest flaw of your artifact is that your voice is too loud. What if you disturb the neighbors with such a loud noise? Zero rubbed his itchy ears and rolled his eyes at Yin Nuashing. Disturb the neighbors? In this wilderness, other than this group of strange creatures that are tainted with that kind of aura, where do the humans come from? There are quite a lot of monsters, though. Those monsters are like a creator who is not satisfied with his creation, but could not destroy it as he wished out of humanitarianism. So he threw them into the garbage collection pile and allowed them to develop as they wished. Then, the thing that was created is a foodie who kept munching on the garbage collection pile. After it was done, it even merged the biological characteristics of the garbage into itself. It's a bunch of failed creations. Yin Nuashing sighed angrily and walked to Ming's side and squatted down. Is it that serious? Huh? When Yin Nuashing squatted down to check on the condition of the girls, Zero suddenly turned his gaze and made an ambiguous sound. He laughed strangely and said, "It seems like someone is really coming." Yin Nuashing had just carried Ming on his back. When he heard this, he slowly stood up and looked in the direction that Zero was looking at. Just as he turned his head, the space not far in front of him shook, and 5 people suddenly appeared. 3 men with dazzling blonde hair and 2 women with fluttering silver hair emerged from the space in surprise. When they saw the large number of corpses and the 2 living people, they were stunned for a moment. Yin Nuashing and Zero looked at the 5 people who were shining with all kinds of lights as soon as they appeared. After a while, they looked at each other and greeted in unison, "Yo, hi." The young man was stunned. He raised his hand and waved in astonishment and greeted them in a way that he did not even react to. Then he was stunned. The person who was called Old Master next to him slapped his face and said in a low voice, "Now is not the time to be high, right?" The atmosphere suddenly became awkward. Both sides did not recognize each other and did not know how to start conversation. Cough, cough about that. Yin Nuashing coughed dryly. He was a little more honest, so he decided to tell them the truth when it was not necessary. After all, they must have seen the invisible comet falling from the sky. So, he said, "We came from outer space. When we landed, we did not control it well and fainted. Can I trouble you to help us?" After he finished speaking, he revealed a very peaceful smile. The 5 people with golden light looked at each other and nodded. "Old Master, I'll leave it to you." The young man smiled and said to the middle-aged man beside him. The middle-aged man shrugged helplessly and landed on Yin Nuashing and the others. The golden light in his hand suddenly bloomed and turned into a sky full of golden particles that fell and gradually merged into the bodies of the people. Yin Nuashing and Zero looked at each other and saw some surprise in each other's eyes. After the golden particles merged into their bodies, they quickly dispersed into golden energy and flowed through their limbs and bones. Those minor and serious injuries were healed at the same time. The 2 conditions were healed almost at the same time. This rather miraculous treatment method made the 2 a little curious. Generally speaking, the more serious the injury, the slower the recovery. This middle-aged man obviously did not follow common sense. No matter what kind of injury they had, they would recover as if nothing had happened in a few seconds. Did I scare you? The young man smiled and said softly, although I don't know which world you are from, I'm the captain of the first squad of the 120th echelon of the dangerous war formation, Ivan Kriven. You can call me Ivan. They're all my team members. Zero's eyes turned and fixed on a young man who called himself Ivan Kriven. She smiled inexplicably and said, Protoss. Oh, that's our title from a long, long time ago. Now, we are more commonly known as the Spirit Race. The middle-aged man who called himself Charles scratched his head of golden hair. His voice was kind and amiable. Compared to the legendary Spirit Race, he was more like an uncle next door. Cynthia sent a message back. Tell our colleagues stationed in the Holy Kingdom not to rush over. Just say that the matter here has been resolved. Let them guard their defensive line with peace of mind. The uncle next door, Charles, turned his head and said softly to the silver-haired woman with a baby face. Cynthia nodded. Her silver eyes curiously looked at Yun Nuashing and the others a few more times. Then, her delicate body flashed and disappeared. Don't mind her. Cynthia is like that. Her highest record is that she hasn't said a word for 100 years. If it were me, I would probably suffocate to death. Another young man with a silly smile on his face, short golden hair that reached his shoulders, and his entire body was emitting golden light. He was so handsome that it made people dazzled. He grinned at Yin Nuashing and the others. Yin Nuashing and Zero looked at each other. In the upper plane of the Five Elements realm, they were not too surprised that there were life forms that could cross worlds. Even if the Protoss of the Five Elements realm were at the core gathering point of the void of the Five Elements realm, they were not surprised. What surprised them was that they did not expect to bump into them as soon as they landed. Were those things? Zero scratched her head. Void beasts, at least that's what they are called here. They have a power very similar to the void, a power that can melt everything into nothingness, and their form, they are good at hiding. Their life forms are constantly changing. They can be gas, solid, or liquid. Oh, maybe one day, a puddle of dirty water you see on the road is a void beast. Ivan shrugged and smiled helplessly. The void beasts have been in the solar system for tens of thousands of years. The beasts of the void are deeply rooted in this solar system. They have been here for tens of millions of years, and we the Eldars have also been fighting here for tens of millions of years. They appear suddenly and silently, and we have never encountered such a powerful enemy. There are so many of them that we can't kill them all. Several small teams, and even a dangerous war brigade have been gathered in this solar system, but they still couldn't completely wipe them out. Once they are wiped out in large numbers, another powerful amalgamation will appear, the one you just wiped out. Ivan sighed. That sounds really scary. Aren't you Protoss? Why can't you completely annihilate them? A voice suddenly came from the ground. Everyone turned to see that Yao Hua was still lying on the ground, but he raised his hand and struggled to say those words. We want to. I've been working in this damn place for tens of millions of years because of this stupid matter. I don't know how many generations have passed, but these black, disgusting things just can't be wiped out. We've tried to chase them into their little lair, but it's just an ordinary cave the size of a small house. There's nothing in it. Even if we destroy it, they will continue to emerge from every corner. Sometimes I even suspect that this planet has been invisibly taken over by them. If it weren't for the mortals living here, I would have long applied to have this planet destroyed by the divine path. As if he had found someone to pour out his grievances to. Ivan went on for a long time, and even breathed a sigh of relief in the end. Yin Nuashing and the others looked at each other blankly. The destruction of the divine path? The executors of the destruction of humanity were humans, and the executors of the destruction of the divine path were gods. Was that how it was calculated? That should be how it was calculated, right? You're saying, this galaxy, which means these few planets have been. Yin Nuashing pondered for a moment. More or less. There are 12 planets with life, and none of them have fallen. There's also a gaseous planet. That planet has simply become their lair. I suspect that our small team won't be able to do anything if we rush in. The inhumanly handsome man sighed, with a slightly worried expression on his face. 12. The cheeks of Yin Nuashing and the others twitched slightly. Their souls had long exploded. Damn, 12 planets? And there's a base camp? Doesn't this sound like a fantasy story? I don't think we'll be able to wipe them out, even if we kill until our hands go numb. And that's with Little Star as a mobile energy source. Our recovery speed will be very slow in this place where the energy is thin. I think we could just pat our butts and leave. This galaxy is too tenacious. We've been killing for tens of millions of years, but it still hasn't fallen. The Ling race is probably holding on for dear life. Boss, I think the fragments should be in that base camp, but if we charge in and don't activate the power of the gods, we'll all be wiped out. It's 100% certain. However, the Twin Divine contract isn't used for battle. Yin Nuashing and Zero sighed helplessly. They had secretly activated the Book of Epics just now to investigate the situation of this galaxy. It was similar to what Ivan had said, or even more severe. The entire planet of the base camp was completely black. It was pitch black. When they zoomed in, they could see a bunch of disgusting things wriggling on it, wriggling like maggots. However, when they activated the Book of Epics, the people in front of them didn't seem to notice. Then what do we do? Everyone wailed. We can only clear them out one by one. There has to be a way, right? Probably. Yin Nuashing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. You came at the wrong time. The flames of war in Leviathan are everywhere. If you want to have fun, you've come to the wrong place. Ivan sighed softly. However, this place hasn't been peaceful for tens of millions of years. We've been talking nonsense. You haven't realized it yet, right? Where are you from? This question made everyone feel a little awkward. They looked at each other for a while and discussed spiritually for a while. In the end, they fixed their eyes on Yin Nuashing and Zero. The two of them looked at each other and winked. They both wanted the other to say something. After a while, they couldn't decide. They couldn't help but reach out their hands and say in unison, "Scissors, rock, paper." Everyone, looking at the outstretched right hand, Yin Nuashing sighed resignedly. She coughed twice to clear her throat and said, We're from a place very far away from here. We've been traveling around the world. We just finished our trip from the Star Origin continent and started a new journey. In the end, when we passed through the world barrier, we were pulled down by a suction force. Then, what you saw just now happened. Pulled down. Ivan and the others were startled. After a moment of silence, Ivan said, Perhaps the power of the void beast interfered. You're all really unlucky. Yin Nuashing opened her mouth and wanted to say that they were here to solve the problem, but she was reprimanded by the others. She had no choice but to nod with a dry smile. Before they found the shard, it was best that they didn't show anything unusual. Ahem, about that. I see that the situation here is quite serious. Do you need our help? You see, our group's combat power is quite high. After resting for a long time, we can move around a bit. Yin Nuashing opened his arms and said. Hearing that, Ivan and the other Eldars looked at each other as if they were discussing something. Seeing that, Yin Nuashing smiled and said, It shouldn't be strange for beings with the power to cross worlds to help each other, right? Oh, that's not what we're thinking about. Ivan shook his head and pondered for a moment before saying, Yes, your forces are indeed very powerful and are on par with ours. If we have your help, we would have a much easier time. However, there is actually no need for you to get involved in this matter. The void beasts are very strange and unpredictable, and even many high-tier spirit gods of the Eldar race have been encircled and killed here, their souls unable to escape in time and completely perishing. After all, you have nothing to do with this matter, and it would be a bit apologetic if you lose people. Everyone laughed bitterly and said to themselves in their souls, No, this matter seems to have a lot to do with us. That seems to be the case. Yin Nuashing scratched his head. Everyone was stunned and shocked. Just as everyone thought that he was going to turn into an onlooker, Yin Nuashing said in distress, But our power to warp worlds has been damaged, so we have to chat here for a while. In order to live more comfortably, it shouldn't be a problem to do some fighting, right? Ivan smiled bitterly at that reason. He thought for a long time, but could not refuse, so he could only nod. Very well, then. I'll have to ask for your help for the next few days. The Eldars will get tired after fighting for a long time. Okay. Yin Nuashin grinned and gave everyone a thumbs up with his hand behind his back. Everyone, that works. Perhaps it was because they had lived in the realm of the gods for a long time, but they were more or less suspicious and vigilant. It had become their nature, so they did not trust others easily. But after coming to the realm of the five elements and seeing the god race, who were theoretically the strongest in the realm of the five elements, they did not have such thoughts. The impression they gave them was that they were generous and could fight and chat. It seems that the difference between the lower realms and the realm of the eight elements is a little. Yaohua could not help but mutter in his soul. Zero smiled and said, "Don't forget, these Eldars. The god race has countless believers. Their believers are spread across the entire realm of the five elements. The believers pray to the spirit gods, and the latter is responsible for protecting them. After all, those believers are their own people. A large part of them are lives that they created. They have to manage countless worlds, unlike the realm of the four elements. Moreover, the spirit realm is absolutely peaceful. How could there be so many situations for the spirit gods to scheme and fight? At most, they would scheme against their neighbors and cheat them of a midnight snack," Yin Nuashing added. "Everyone, the god race is very friendly, whether it is to worlds with high-level power or to newly born and weak worlds. For powerful beings like us who have power that is on par with them, as long as we don't wreak havoc everywhere and destroy worlds every day, they are generally friends. Even if we ask for help, they won't suspect anything, so don't worry." Zero looked at Ivan and the others with a gentle smile on his face and nodded at them. Everyone finally understood after hearing this. Yin Nuashing and Zero sighed silently. No matter what, they have cleaned up the mess for us for tens of millions of years. If they don't want to admit it, they have to find a reason to stay and help us. Do you think we will say it? You already said it. Everyone's face darkened. Yin Nuashing coughed dryly and patted little purple soul on her shoulder. She glanced at Ivan and said, "Ahem, this is not the place to talk. Let's find a place to rest. While we're at it, tell us about this world and what happened on these 12 planets." That's true. Let's rest at the Bloodwing Fortress. We have to go back and prepare. While we're at it, we have to tell our people about what happened just now. That big explosion and meteor shower gave us a fright. Ivan nodded. As he spoke, he glanced at Yin Nuashing and the others. This inexplicable gaze made Yin Nuashing feel a little embarrassed. According to the scale of the explosion and the reaction after the explosion, if this was an ordinary world, the entire planet would probably tremble. If it trembled, all life on the planet would be finished. However, this Leviathan was not an ordinary world. Even if they blew up a huge meteor basin that was close to 200,000 feet in size, Leviathan did not tremble at all. The group stretched and prepared for a while. Yin Nuashing carried Ming, who was still sleeping, on her back and gestured to Ivan. Then, everyone teleported to the Bloodwing Fortress and they arrived. Everyone saw a large group of people nervously grabbing their weapons when they saw them. Energy surged out of their bodies. But before it reached its peak, they heaved a sigh of relief when they saw a few people covered in golden light in front of them. They bowed to the few people in front of them. Yin Nuashing saw the warriors of all shapes and sizes dressed in tattered black armor. Their eyes were filled with undisguised fanaticism and respect from the bottom of their hearts. When they saluted Ivan and the others, they did not hesitate at all. It was more like an instinctive action. Everyone else also saw this scene. At this moment, their eyes were slightly flickering. This unique world made them feel very curious. In the world of the gods, things like faith were almost non-existent. My people, pick up your weapons. Those who can still move, take care of the wounded. Doctors, work hard and treat the wounded warriors. Knights, clean up the battlefield. This time, the invasion has been repelled by our friends from outer space. Cheer for a short while. Ivan waved his hand, and his golden robe fluttered in the wind. His loud roar was very imposing, and it spread for dozens of miles. However, this victory is only temporary. We will have more victories, but we will not allow a single failure. If we lose, behind us will be the boundless Caner Prairie, which is your holy kingdom. Prepare well. Seize the time to recover. Spiritual guides, prepare for the battlefield. While cheering, you can't relax at all. We obey the God's command. The thousands of warriors roared loudly. Yin Nuashing and the others could not help but raise their heads. This kind of imposing manner, it should be said that this world had been in this kind of war for tens of millions of years. Just based on their imposing manner, they were not much weaker than the forces of the God's realm. Did I scare you? The auras on your bodies are very peaceful. Although you are very powerful, you don't seem like people who have been fighting in fierce places for a long time. The auras on your bodies are young and full of vitality. I like this kind of aura very much. Another female spiritual god, who called herself Osir, could not help but laugh when she saw the slightly surprised expressions on Yin Nuashing and the others. Yin Nuashing was stunned, and the others also opened their mouths in astonishment. They could not help but ask in their souls, "Isn't the God's realm ferocious?" You are children of a peaceful era for the time being. Zero was speechless. Then, everyone let out an "oh." Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes and looked at the female spiritual god with long silver hair that reached her ankles. She glanced at her stunning face for a while and then turned away. She sighed and said, "We like to run around and play, so we can be considered to have been on the battlefield. It's just that the form is different." Maybe it's not that. Yin Nuashing mumbled for a long time and found that she could not say anything. Her pretty face was a little red. Seeing this, Osier could not help but chuckle, causing the former's face to turn even redder. That's why it's better for people like you who have a 30% death rate to speak less. Look at you, your face is red from holding it in. Zero clicked his tongue and patted Yin Nuashing's shoulder. Yin Nuashing took a deep breath, freed up a hand, and knocked down on Zero. He performed a hand knife against a knife for the audience. The sonic boom and the clanging sound of the collision were like the collision of steel. What's wrong with these two? Ivan turned around in astonishment and saw Yin Nuashing and Osier fighting. His face could not help but twitch. Calm down, just smile. Smile, don't worry about those two crazy people. Nightmare smiled calmly. This scene is very familiar. Everyone took a deep breath. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.